to be that chain, right? The Move ecosystem to be that chain where it can be integrated in Web 2 systems, right? Where people are interacting with NFTs and metaverse and all that stuff without even knowing that they're interacting with it. And I'm like, shit, it's pretty much barely 2.5x off of VC price. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
took a bit of a gamble on that, and unfortunately, I sold right before the big breakout at just under $10. But I mean, hey, bro, that was still a pretty good move for me. And I mean, you've known me for almost a year, dude. I'm a bull at heart, and
Yeah.
it just feels good. And even if we just range from like yearly open to 25K, I really don't care, man. I like seeing certain things that have been happening. There's a bunch of TVL being locked up in Lido, which is like staking, liquid staking derivatives. A bunch of TVLs going on Aave with Aave V3, and essentially like there's going to be lower interest fees on your loan, and you're going to be able to borrow a lot more, and also their stable coin, so it's going to be more of an ecosystem now. And I know that's a bit of a gamble, but like I'm the kind of person that really only looks at Ethereum DeFi when it comes to crypto. I'm kind of stupid when it pertains to like the macro and all that stuff. I kind of gave up on that. It's not really my forte. But that's pretty much where I stand. And could we hit new lows? Probably, but am I betting on it? I don't think so. I think you would have to see like on-chain liquidations go crazy. What do you think? Like, how do you see crypto now that you're here as a speaker, brother?
Yeah, I have a question for you. With regards to new lows, are you referring to Bitcoin, Ethereum, or altcoins? Because historically speaking, I know when we are in a bull market cycle, which I don't believe we are in yet, I still believe that we are heading towards a macro accumulation range on Bitcoin. Whether the low is in, whether it's not in, it doesn't really matter to me. It's more about going through that base formation process. But I can say one thing, and I think having been in the space since 2016-17, when Bitcoin goes on an absolute tear, altcoins get absolutely smashed. So from an altcoin perspective, look, I'm not convinced that the laws are in on the majority of altcoins. I'm not even sure how many altcoins are going to survive over the next 6 to 12 months if we do head into a recession in Q3, Q2, Q3, Q4. But I think with it comes great opportunity, right? We've already got a taste for which altcoins perform really well, or have performed very well over the last 4, 5, 6 weeks. And I know individuals like yourself are really on top of the game in terms of which projects are likely to come out over the next 2 to 3 to 6 months, and which projects are likely to have a really good prospect in terms of outperforming to the upside from an altcoin perspective. But why don't you tell us some of the projects that you're keeping an eye out on
Yeah. So
over the year or so? Because I remember you've talked about
yeah,
Is it Celestia and
yeah.
a few others as well?
Like I've spoken about Celestia and also Saga, but Saga XYZ is a unicorn. Like, all right, so the date is February 2nd, 2023, right? I'm going to go public and say that I truly believe that the greatest projects that are going to come out in the next year and 2 years is Saga XYZ and also Shibuya XYZ. I've already hosted Saga. I've spoken about them at length. And if you see what Saga's doing, dude, they are partnering with industry titans left and right, dude. They partnered with Matic. They're doing great things in the Cosmos ecosystem, and essentially they're opening up their entire ecosystem to every virtual machine. They have the new ones, right? Like the Move ecosystem, right? They're partnering up with Say Network. Dude, Say Network is going to be massive, man. You're talking about like essentially what the original vision of Solana was going to be, but on top of Cosmos. And dude, you see like the insane amount of devs that are being onboarded on Cosmos. I mean, come on, dude. We're talking like a 2,000% increase in dev power. And I understand,
Can I,
I understand like
can I
there's a
Can I
recession.
pause you there? Can I
Go ahead,
pause
go
you
ahead.
there for a
Go ahead, go
second?
ahead.
I've got a question for you. Now, we've seen I'm all for network adoption and growth in developer community. I think that really stands out for me when looking at certain chains which will perform well, especially ecosystems. Now, you've talked about there's been a huge uptake or an uptake in developers on the Cosmos system. Where are those developers coming from? Are they coming from other chains such as Luna, or are they leaving Solana to develop on Cosmos? Because I know that one of the skill sets on Cosmos is to have the ability to develop in Rust, right? So, could you just give us an idea where those developers are coming from? Are these
Yeah,
new
so
developers coming to the
so
space? Are these existing developers?
the majority of them have come from Ethereum, and they've also been in the Cosmos Hub since 2018, before the hub went live. So IBC, right? Like inter blockchain communication, like the whole interoperability that's built on top of Cosmos, that's been in the work just around the same time as Ethereum. So about 2014, 2013, right? And it's been a product that hasn't really come to fruition up until 2021 with their osmosis chain. And then they had Juno, which is more suitable for DAOs, and now they have Stargaze, which is more suitable for things like NFT and GameFi. And now they're building Neutron, which is going to be the DeFi infrastructure hub on top of the Cosmos hub. So you can think of it like, as yourself, you're a big fan of Polkadot, right? So think of it as like the Akala network, right? Right on top of Cosmos, and it's ready to go. When these things launch, it is ready to go. This is not some like testnet froth VC sort of scam. Like, most of these products are all community funded, and a lot of the dev power comes from like that initial like smart contract wave from Ethereum, right? Like like the circle between Gavin Wood and all those people. Like one of the bigger guys from Cosmos, his name is Jack or Zach. I can't remember his last name. It's a bit harder, but essentially what Saga is doing is it's making it easier for devs, no matter where they come from, to just build on top of Saga and have that shared security. And the majority of the development, and mind you, there's over 300 projects building on top of this. And when their mainnet goes live next year, over 100 of them are going to be live. And if you look at what Rebecca's done, like, dude, she ran up SKU Chain to over $1 billion in annual volume. That is massive, man. If you look at the team behind it and you look at the power that's going on, the biz dev related sort of stuff, like, nobody does that except Matic, right? And when we talk about Shibuya XYZ, we're essentially talking about like imagine getting equity from OpenSea, but we're talking about storytelling NFTs where the end user is going to be able to support the content creator, and it goes to the creator. And say I'm an NFT like project creator, right? I can put a proposal on Shibuya, right? Like, this is my story. These are the characters that I want. And then the end user of that can sort of vote on that proposal to see how the story is going to go. So you have your creation coming to life, and you're going to be able to vote for certain outcomes. So it's a cool sort of like dual token and NFT collection sort of stuff. And they're partnered with Azuki's and also Clonex and other people within the NFT GameFi esque industry. And if you look at what Emily Yang has done, dude, this lady did work for DC. If you've seen Batman versus Superman, like, a lot of that promotion work was her. And also some of like the OG DeFi stuff, a lot of those graphics come from her. So she's making Shibuya centered around bringing the next 100 million users from Web 2. And when I say Web 2, I'm talking about the individual that gets hype when they see Fortnite graphics, when they see like the latest Halo game, right? All these PC games that like center around online communities, that's what Shibuya is focusing on. And if you look at the work that they're doing, like partnering with Steve Aoki and also other industry titans when it pertains to music and animation, and you look at what they're slowly building, this is basically like having a chance to invest in the next Studio Ghibli. But you can call it Web3, right? So we're coming at a stage now where there's actual innovation coming to works. And I usually don't get emotional on these spaces, but like, I honestly and legitimately think that most people have been psyoped, right, on a lot of Twitter spaces by individuals that just like to doom post, right? When Binance was going under, there was massive amounts of funding for these projects. My bad. When Binance was being shilled to go under on a lot of these Twitter spaces, massive funding was going around the background when it pertains to these projects. If we were really going to the shitter, to the gutter, none of this funding would be happening. None of these conferences would be going on. You know, if we take a look at all the conferences that are going on in 2023, and people are saying this is going to be, oh, Bitcoin has never, undergone this massive, depression cycle, whatever. It's like, all right, so why aren't we at 8K, 9K? Why are we still working? You know what I mean? I think the worst part of it is over, and people should be looking at, the next 18 to 24 months. Could we revisit the lows? Sure. But the thing is, like, who is going to be that crazy seller? You know what I mean? Because, dude, we pumped off of the grayscale news from chapter 11. So, like I said, I think most people, if they're not comfortable, going into this market, uh, buying the tokens that are out right now, then at least look towards the new innovations that are coming in the next 6 to 12 months, projects that are doing something new, right? And if you want to look at, say, all right, this project is new, what are they doing differently? Then you have to look at their community, right? Go on a space, and there's different types of spaces. There's the ecosystem and VC space. Bro, Aptos, Polygon, Say Network, even the Cosmos Hub, they do spaces every day. And if you go inside those spaces, you can actually see why people like Suzu were just net long. You will understand why some funds are just long only. And it's going to be very hard to sort of counter that when you're in that circle, right? And then when you go to these like smaller sub-DAO spaces, like, or community type spaces when it pertains to certain ecosystems, right? Like Luna and all that stuff. Just look at what Luna is doing, man. They have an entire ecosystem ready to be revamped over the next quarter, where the demand for the Luna token itself is going to be astronomical when you compare it to something like AVAX, right? Subnets are cool, but the actual demand, right, for the token on that layer is it's not really there, man. And I think when you look at things, like Feather and like Alliance and Enterprise, all the amazing things that Terra is doing, you can honestly say that there is a case to be made when it comes to these redemption stories. I am strongly of the belief of the redemption arc, the rise of the phoenix, rise from the ashes, right? And of course, it's not going to be pegged to a stable coin or whatever, but if you just give it a chance and see what's going on in the background, it's more probable that good things are going to happen than bad things. But again, like me and Payne have been saying over the last 2 months or so, it's better to be cautiously optimistic, right? Don't go full optimistic where you feel blinded, right? Because I was blinded myself this time last year. It's better to be cautiously, like step by step, right? Baby steps. But I think the worst is behind us, man. And I think it's better to pay attention to like the newer innovations if you don't want to, you know, take the risk of going into like these tokens that have a lot of overhead supply, you know. And yeah, it's kind of like my long-winded intro rant there,
That
brother.
was a badass opening monologue, Wobby.
Dude,
You were spitting,
like
man.
I've kept this in. I've kept this in for so long, man, for so long. And I'm usually more like relaxed and all that stuff. But honestly, man, I think it's just better to let the brakes off and just tell it how it is, dude. Like, bro, like it's come to a point where, like, dude, like Jerome Powell is not gonna freaking tank the price of of NFTs. They're just not. Go on KuCoin. If you go on KuCoin and click on the NFT ETFs, dude, the Bored Ape Yacht Club one is up 7x in the last 3 months. And if all you did was stay away from the charts and just pay attention to the news, you would think that ETH was at $100. You know what I'm saying? And yes, I understand that spot isn't necessarily buying right now, but most people are now on chain. The TVL in DeFi is pretty much close to being parabolic right now, man. Lido's going crazy.
Yeah, and just to add on to that, dude, it's like,
It's going crazy. I'm sorry if I talk.
what's the downside
Yeah.
of betting on these fresh charts? Like, that's the reason. I think the reason Kanto took so long to pop off is because it was actually pretty hard to buy for a while. And then once people realized you could get it on Bicket and Mexi, and everyone started tweeting about it, it really caught a bid. And I mean, it's still consolidating above 50 cents. So I think 2023 is a great year to like bet on new projects as far as Optimism, Kanto, Aptos. Aptos kind of already had a move, but I think that they're probably going to run it back on Optimism. Every time Aptos pumps, and Hash mentioned this as well on our space last Friday, but every time Aptos pumped, I mean, Optimism basically caught a bid at least like 30% of the move that Aptos did. And it's just like, even if the macro is terrible, like, what's the downside on betting on these brand new projects that don't have any bag holders and don't have people like itching to get out and basically break even? I think that, whenever you have stuff in price discovery, you're just like, the chance that you make money is, I mean, pretty skewed in your favor if you just hold spot and not like degen on leverage. And same thing, like, dude, especially with NFTs, I've been preaching that for like 8 months. NFTs were like pretty much did not give a fuck about the rest of the market last year. They were going stupid, and Jerome Powell is not gonna affect the price of your damn JPEGs, bro. Like, if you're paying attention and you're in the trenches on CT, you're gonna find great projects. And same thing with like DeFi and Uniswap protocols and stuff. Not Uniswap protocols, but tokens on Uniswap. There's just so many gains to be made if you're actually paying attention and
Pain,
looking at new stuff.
that Payne, before we go to EXO and Damiano, I know they've had their hands up on that first episode of Crypto World Radio. It's either the first episode or the second one. You can fact check me on this. We had mentioned that the new narratives, right, or what have you, perhaps will be back at DeFi. And if you look at things like DYDX, right, and also things like GMX, brother, they're like 150 to 200% off of that time frame. So like the proof is in the pudding, right? The proof is in the pudding. The market's telling you something. I'm not calling for new all-time highs, right? But there's a case to be made. There is a case to be made that 12 months from now, we're probably going to be at 35, 40K. That's just me. That's just me, dude. Dr. A. Dr. A has been he's been clowning me, brother. He's been clowning me, but doctor, man, you got to step it up with those giant spiders, brother. I forgot what they were called. The man freak spiders, dude. But XO, what's going on, brother?
Yeah, I love the optimism in this group. It's great to hear the joyful notes coming from your vocal cords. But I think for me personally, I've said it time and time again. I think we've talked about Operation Kilburn in 2022. We absolutely nailed it on the way down. And I think you're right in terms of optimism. For me, I've been in the space since 2016, 2017. The best opportunities come in the altcoin space. And taking it back to a point that you made, if you looked at the likes of A16Z, Binance Labs, they were doing huge $500 billion raises, opening up new funds to invest in new projects. So yes, I do believe there's going to be a plethora of projects coming onto the market in the next 12 to 18 months. I wouldn't be too overly concerned as to where the bottom is on Bitcoin. I think we're closer to a bottom than we are, probably over the next 6 to 9 months. I do believe that this market has still got some way to play. But I would also be cautious with regards to, yes, we've seen some fantastic pumps and rallies, but you have to take into consideration that liquidity across the board is very, very thin. It doesn't take much to push a lot of these altcoins up, and it won't take much for them to come all the way back down. So just to have a sense of reality, it's for me, I tweeted about this earlier. In a bear market, you often see altcoins have a 5 to 7 week cyclical period where they just absolutely rip to the upside and then slowly bleed back to the downside. And that's generally what I feel could happen over the next 2-3 months again. But look, it's the 2nd of February. Let's see where we are by the end of the month. I still believe coins like Aptos, OP will eventually be trading lower than what they are now. But that's not to deter anybody. I think you're right in the sense where looking towards the later parts of the year, I would definitely be focusing on the new projects that are likely to come out, because I think they probably give the best risk to reward and upside potential, where you can probably capture a 10 or a 15 or a 20x. I think we have to really consider positioning in for the next halving. macro conditions, recession, whether that happens, when it happens, I still believe that the Bitcoin halving is a strong enough narrative to see beta assets outperform the S&P, the Nasdaq, some of the global market pairs out there. So yeah, I'm all for being bullish later in the year. I just think now is a very, very good time to research projects. But again, I have to come back to this one case where, look, when I was in the markets in 2017, there weren't as many altcoins circulating as there are today. Let's roll forward 12 months into it. In 12 months' time, the probability is that the number of altcoins circulating in the space are likely to double. So therefore, I think liquidity is likely to become, without a doubt, thinner across many of these altcoins. And with that, we're going to see some absolutely ripping market price appreciation across these altcoins, but just as brutally, they're going to come all the way back down again, if not quicker than the current cycle that we've just experienced in 2022. And I think that's just a byproduct of the market, the number of shitcoins in the space. And ultimately, all I'm trying to preach is I think now is a good time to do your research, but also practice very good risk management in taking profits on the way up or looking for macro factors which could affect, the general crypto market to the downside once it's had a very aggressive rip to the upside maybe in 2024 post halving. But yeah, I think the safe bets are those projects coming out in the next 6 to 12 months that probably come out the tail end of a recession. The risk is there to be had, so it's probably a good time to risk. But now I think projects like Aptos, OP, I wouldn't even go anywhere near at this point. To be honest with you, I'm looking at the market thinking of when can I start shorting this shit all the way back down again, heading into Q2. So I'm just waiting patiently for the tide to turn and ride these shitcoins all the way back down again. And that's not me being bearish. I'm just looking at this as an opportunity. The majority of people out there consider altcoins or alt season on the way up. For me, alt season is on the way up and on the way back down. But unfortunately, many people get burnt on the way down because they become emotionally attached to these projects. But, I'm sure, hopefully, many people have learned the lesson in 2022 and they'll be better for it in 2023 and 2024.
So as far as liquidity is concerned, I like looking at things like TVL compared to market cap, right? So on ETH2, I know this is completely off topic, but on ETH2, right, there's this product called Aura Finance, and they're basically trying to do what Lido's doing, right? Liquid staking derivatives. Their market cap is 60 million, but their TVL is pretty much almost 10x that. So that tells me, there's a playground to be had there, right? For at least a little swing, 50% swing, 35% swing. And you know me, dude, I am not a derivatives trader. I am predominantly an individual that likes to look for long ops. But there is one thing about liquidity that I do wanted to throw your way. A little close to a year ago, you had shown me a cross-border capital, and I think it was last week they had said that global liquidity had bottomed in October, and now it's starting to uptick. So to me, it tells me that I need to ape. I'll be honest here, man. I'm not a macro guru. I'm not smart. I'm not Darius Dale. I admire Darius Dale. He's 6'5" and 330 pounds. If you look at Darius Dale, you look at that guy's neck, you say, whoa, let's hide the eggs and the bacon from this man. I do not want to make him hungry. He's going to come after me, right? Right? Like an offensive tackle. He played for Yale. He's massive. So with that being said, I'm not him. I'm not macro Alf. I just try to assess things and put them in a concise manner that tells me ape or not ape, right? And I thank you for showing me things like that. But despite me in pain, sort of being more cautiously bullish. For me, I was a little bit later. I waited until, mid-December, right, going into Christmas. I saw Luna at $1. And I'm like, something is going on here. Something is going on. There's a huge disparity between, this asset's price compared to the rest of the market. There's a ton of things going on in the background that people don't know about yet. Solana was shitting the bed. Aptos was shitting the bed. And there was no like crazy news events. They were just bleeding out. So to me, it reminded me of late 2018, right? So I wanted to know your thoughts on that sort of of
Yeah.
what this cross-border capital guy is suggesting by that. What exactly does that mean? And then we'll pass it over to Damiano. I know he's had his hand up for a minute.
Yeah, look, I think there's many connotations with regards to liquidity flow. It's just basically an increase of dollar liquidity that's flowing into the market, whether that's a result of the TGA and the reverse repo market facilitation reducing week by week, and we're seeing those dollar liquidity flows back into global markets, which once we see global markets perform, we know crypto is a beta asset class which performs. My concern is a possible uptick in inflation over the next month or two. Again, I don't really want to delve too much into the macro aspects on this particular spaces, but I think ultimately, look, you don't have to be a macro genius. You just got to be diligent enough to maybe spend half an hour of your day just reading about macro, what's happening out there in macro worlds, to give you a head start as to what possible risks there are in crypto, right? Because look, at the end of the day, I'm no macro genius. I do spend a lot of time reading about it, understanding it. It's essentially what saved my portfolio in 2022. I sold the top of Bitcoin. I started shorting altcoins against the consensus of the crypto space. I got a lot of hate for it. It doesn't bother me. Sometimes you have to be resolute. But equally, now to the upside, you have to identify, all right, what are the turning pivoting points in the economy, in the data? What is the data telling you? For me right now, the data is not quite there. Generally risk on is when growth is performing well, growth is contracting, inflation is still fairly sticky, it is coming down. And rates are going to continue to stay high for a considerable amount of time. So I don't think this is going to resolve anytime soon. However, having said that, like you said, in 2018, 2019, and I think for the best part from now, myself, right, people assume that I'm a derivatives trader, but truth be told, in 2021, I was barely trading Bitcoin. I was 90% of the time I was trading altcoins. 2022, 90% of the times I was trading altcoins on the way down. And it's going to be the same for me. The only time I trade Bitcoin or Ethereum or global markets is when I generally find that crypto or altcoins aren't really offering much out there in the market. But having said that, the best trades for me have come when I've been proactive, like yourself, researching the projects that are coming out, just staying one step ahead of the crowd and positioning into those projects very early and being very, very patient at very, attractive prices, probably where prices are depressed across the board. They're the opportunities that you can buy, just sit and hold for 6 to 12 months with the view that the project doesn't go to shit, the fundamentals remain strong, and hopefully you'll reap the rewards into a bull market.
Yeah, man, it's going to be fun being right there with you when we go full bull. It truly is. It really is. And I think as we get closer to that having, we're going to see a lot of cool things pop up. Like I said, we're going to have beautiful ecosystems come into play. We're going to have blockchain modularity, right? With Celestia. We're going to have rollups as a service on Cosmos via Saga XYZ. We're going to have storytelling, NFTs, and generative art by Shibuya XYZ. We're going to have things like Nillion Network, which are going to be the security layer on top of ETH2s when it pertains to metaverse and also GameFi. We're going to have things like Aztec Network, that's all about privacy, and then ZK rollups and things of that nature on the Ethereum main layer. Many, 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 many things are coming to crypto on Web3, and I'm honestly excited for it. And I just want to say, if there's anybody in the crowd right now that wants to come up and join the conversation, feel free to click that request button right at the bottom left, and I'll bring you right up. We're having a community roundtable discussion about all things crypto, digital assets, whatever you want to name it. And we're here joined by our friends Trader XO, Feel Payne, Damiano, and Avocado Toast. My name is Wabi. I host these spaces pretty much every day now. I usually try to do them at 7 p.m. Eastern time, but sometimes they're a little bit earlier in the day or a little bit later. So if you enjoy content like this when it comes to the discussion of digital assets and you enjoy my voice, feel free to follow us here on Twitter at Because Bitcoin and turn on bell notifications. I hope you have a great time as you're listening to this space. And in case you can't stick around for the entirety of the thing, it's going to be uploaded onto our YouTube channel 5 to 10 minutes after the space is concluded. So I want to thank you guys for joining us here at Because Bitcoin for tonight's segment of Crypto World Radio. So with that being said, Damiano, go ahead, brother. Good to have you here. How are you, my man?
Great, thanks, bro. I guess I'll try to go topic by topic because you sort of touched on a couple other things in between, so I guess I'll address each one in order. But I have the first thing. I would agree with you. Definitely on the equity side of things, I won't get into it because I am a little more bearish on crypto. I said this in the last space. For sure, even if we were to, I know we'll retest some kind of low again as we normally do, whether the bottom was in or not. Even if there is another break on the crypto side of things, the risk to reward ratio is definitely it's much more in favor of course, going long and sort of DCAing, hodl and stack kind of mentality. Even if we did see, like, I know 8K was mentioned, I think it's a little extreme. Even if we did see it compared to all-time highs, plus what we would get on the actual break of all-time highs, it still leans much heavily in favor of a higher risk to reward. So definitely agree on cautious optimism. I want to shout out XO. It's the first time I ever heard you speak, brother, and I agree with 99, pretty much actually 100% of what you're saying. I can't see anything I disagree with. It was a pleasure to hear you speak. I agree completely. I would say in terms of TVL, I'll talk a little bit about why it's a great metric, but it's not 100% reliable. One, because it subsidizes and heavily favors whales in most cases, and also when you account for things like slippage and fees, it's usually the smaller retail investor who gets burnt with TVL. So it is still a great metric. Um, I wouldn't necessarily only always use TVL, but again, when we're talking about DeFi, I know that's like the main metric talked about. And I guess I'll go into a little of what XO was saying about altcoins and how it's great just to ride them up, and especially on the way down. Altcoins remind me, for anybody who's ever traded OTC back in the day before the all the reforms were there. Altcoins remind me of pre-reform OTC. There's massive gains to be made, but you absolutely cannot marry them. You definitely want to ride the trend, but like you said, emotional attachment is what kills you in these situations. So it's definitely the time to hunt for innovation. I agree completely, but on a macro perspective, I agree we're not seeing anything data wise, not quite there. Definitely better than where it was in the last quarter, 100%. But there's still some decent arguments that could be made for coming back down. I don't think we've fully seen the scope of this recession. I think there's a lot of factors that we have this year that we didn't see in the 2017 cycle as well. I do agree also with the scattered liquidity, though. Again, if you're talking only TVL, you're right. And I guess the last topic I'll go to is, having worked with multiple NFTs myself, I want to just maybe stray away from like absolutism in there, like saying like Jerome Powell can't touch your JPEGs. Like, now that's the case. In the last 3 months, that's been the case. Having worked with 4 different projects just last year and seeing the abysmal state of the market, unless you are a 1% blue chip for over 6 months, you were absolutely getting battered by macro conditions. The volume was not there. Again, it's great to be optimistic, and I agree with the optimism, especially on a longer term perspective. But I just think statements like, like they can't do this and they can't do that. They can, and they've already proven they can. And it's never too good to be too confident in something. And I think I've said that in every space I've been with you here, brother. And I always love to hear your opinion. So it's not a hardcore disagree. It's just a you'd be surprised kind of moment. And if you're always expecting it, and you have that little voice in the back of your head saying, maybe I'm wrong, or maybe there's something I can't account for, then it could at least prevent you from losing a lot more money and maybe breaking whatever emotional attachment we may have to any certain asset class. So it's just to say, from experience, I've seen, NFTs, I work in NFTs. I've seen them get battered by macro conditions and unfavorable outlook. So again, right now, the strength is amazing. And the NFTs themselves, I would liken to an OTC market even more, because in times of uncertainty, in times of high volatility, in times of unfavorable outlook, they will definitely be an asset that you will see a lot of money rotation into while we gear up for the next cycle in different asset classes. So I agree with you on that aspect. is really just the one caution on the, saying nothing can affect the JPEGs and things like that, because sadly in the NFT world, it's a lot of key players who hold a lot of the total liquidity. And then there's the retail who sort of follows in and follows the trends and such. But when they feel like pulling the strings, even if it's a knee jerk or a fake out, they can. So that's really all I wanted to highlight there.
That's a fair criticism, and I don't mean to speak in absolutes. I just think that, considering the supply of most projects, like the way I trade NFTs primarily is just looking at existing projects that have good communities, and it's pretty left curve. But if you just like pay attention to active founders and people that are continuously like interacting with the community over a long enough time frame, they usually end up doing pretty well. And so last year there was some really good trades if you just like paid attention to who's like holding spaces and having, giving back to their community basically. But I had my hand raised because I actually wanted to ask XO a question. What would it take you for you to basically be like, okay, I think the macro quote unquote isn't as bad as I anticipated, and I think I would be ready to deploy, because I think there is a situation where like we range for 6 months and the American consumer kind of just takes the inflation, right? And they don't really uh like it doesn't affect them too hard to the point where they're just losing their jobs and everything's crumbling. And and then we start getting closer and closer to the halving and people just become optimistic and kind of just roll with it. So that's definitely a situation I'm entertaining, and I'm wondering more so on your end if it's a time-based thing or if it's like you're waiting to see something happen per se, like a big capitulation. Because if we're like, let's say we're at like 22K in June or August, we're at basically the same prices as now, and we've just been ranging. Like, would that be a situation where you're like, okay, maybe it's time to start buying spot for things that I'm really like fundamentally bullish on?
Yeah, sure. I think it's a difficult question. It's a bit of a loaded question for me to answer because, as a trader, and I wear two hats: a trader and an investor. As a trader, when I look at the markets, am I really looking to gain exposure to Bitcoin here in the market or altcoins? Not really. I've had a very good 21, 22, and I look at the market now and I just think to myself, pretty much, I think you've hit the nail on the head, where we could be in a period where over the next 3 to 6 months we see a fairly volatile range where price is trying to it's going to hit an equilibrium of supply and demand. There's going to be a transfer of hands between Bitcoin and stocks and equities, and some people are going to get shaken out at the bottom. Whether we get a capitulation or not, I think it remains to be seen. In all honesty, I've only got as much of a clue as anybody else in this chat, whether it happens or not. But as a trader, all we can do is prepare for a given scenario. So if Bitcoin does, revisit back down to 16K, is that being bearish? No, not at all. I think that's a brilliant opportunity to potentially start considering buying Bitcoin. It's going down to the 16K level again, maybe 15, maybe 14, wherever the bottom is. That's probably going to be a good opportunity to buy, but we have to assess where we are in terms of the macro conditions as well. You see, markets are forward-looking, and all this doom and gloom about the markets heading into recession or the economy, markets are forward-looking. So there's a set of forward-looking indicators that I focus on, and it's something that I shared on my streams. So one of my favorite ones is obviously you've got the 210s yield curve. It's very well documented out there on Twitter Spaces and all over social media in terms of Fin Twitter. And then you've got the 3-month, the 10-year yield curve as well, which is heavily inverted. The depth and duration is very it's been quite substantial. So the first point I'd need to see is the yield curves come out of inversion. But then we know that the PMIs lag the yield curve. And historically, looking at the data over the last 20, 30, 40 years, every time the PMI bottoms, which means that when contraction of the manufacturing services and the ISM services has bottomed out and you start seeing an uptick in growth, that's probably the time to start really considering being risk on. And I'm sure it's going to align with the Fed monetary and fiscal policy moving forward. So really, they're kind of the crux. When you think of the economic cycle, the business cycle, it's just growth, inflation, and then fiscal and monetary policy, which is the Fed policy or central bank policies. So they're the four core aspects which contribute heavily to the business and economic cycle. So long story short, for me to get bullish, I just need to see positivity and growth. And if you look at any market, if you overlay equities with PMIs on the growth cycle, you'll see that when growth is contracting, it's a risk-off environment. When growth is going through a phase of expansion or growing or at a steady rate or pace, not GDP, I'm talking about growth in terms of the PMIs, that's very much a risk-on environment. And that's conducive to rates being at a fairly low level. So again, I think it's just a point where I'm not bearish. The time to be bearish was last year. Moving forward now, it's just identifying good buying opportunities that you can start deploying cash back into Bitcoin, but in an environment that's more risk friendly than what it currently is. I still think there's some considerable risk. Short term, yeah, the markets are rallying. Great, markets don't go down in one line, which is what we did in 2022. But we've seen a rally straight off the yearly open. So I suspect at some point over the next 3 to 6 months, we will see some form of deep correction, whether that's 20K for a macro high or low, or whether it's going to be a low at 14K. Doesn't really matter. All we need to see is just one big accumulation range to have confidence that, okay, now's a good time to buy with a clear invalidation.
I just wanted to piggyback off of that. What Damien said, I think EXO hit the nail on the head. Like, I think a lot of people are kind of confused now that, like, they're not explicitly bearish, so that means they're bullish. But I think you can be not bearish and also wait around for the right opportunity, like EXO is saying, and not exactly be bullish just because there isn't bearish shit staring you in the face. I think that's like a huge thing that people should take from what EXO said. I'm definitely writing that down because I think people kind of get in the mindset that you have to be either or, right? There's not really a fair balance. In most traders' minds, they're either bullish or bearish, and they're looking at the bias from either side. But I think there's moments like now where it's so undecided that we're seeing kind of relief pump, but at the same time, no one's really sure what the fuck's going on. So, like, there's no real reason to be bearish, but at the same time, it kind of doesn't really make sense to kind of start throwing your chips in. I guess the question I want to throw towards the group on top of that was like, I agree we're seeing like kind of more risk on environment, Ultra having a better day, and like some of the altcoins, especially like on-chain stuff on Arbitrum and ETH, are having kind of a heyday. But the narrative I don't really think is like there, like amongst kind of like the smaller cap communities and altcoin communities, they're still kind of like having a difficult time. It kind of just seems like there's nowhere for the money to go, and that was the easiest thing to pump. And I don't really feel like it's entirely kind of like we should be praising the bullish gods. I think people should be really careful. I mean, definitely like take your bets on Uniswap where you can and feel like right, but like there's no real narrative or anything, and like the halving is still over a year away. Like, I think people could get really hurt deploying heavily in the next few weeks to months with kind of the narrative switching they're seeing on CT.
Yeah, I agree. I fully agree. I in all honesty, I've traded through bear markets, and I've got carried away in 2018 when altcoins were rallying, and guess what? It only took a week or two before they absolutely got hammered all the way back down again. So, and that's the result of really low liquidity in the markets. But the worst, see, the cause for concern is, and I'm not being bearish here. You see, as a trader and investor, you have to put risk management first. It's all about preserving your capital, preserving your profits, or whatever profits you are. At what point do you realize those profits? Okay, the longer this continues grinding up, the greater the risk is to the downside. You have to remember that some of these altcoins have literally ripped 2, 3, 4, 5x, maybe more in the space of 4 weeks. So, and a lot of this is fueled by derivatives and shorts being squeezed. So if the books are thin on the way up, the books are going to be very, very thin on the way down. And I keep preaching this on my live stream that it's only going to take 1 or 2 days of absolute carnage, and you could see a 30, 40, 50% correction of altcoins in a single day. So it's important to have a stop loss in that respect. But like I said, liquidity is key, and I absolutely agree with you. Look, I'm still happily to say I'm 90% cash. I've got absolutely zero fear of missing out. I couldn't practically give a shit what the market does for the next few weeks. I'm just happy to trade a 10-15% stack when I see trades fit my setups, and that's it. Because as an investment perspective, I'm just not seeing the risk to reward there that I want to buy Bitcoin here and chance it, that the fact that we could be heading into recession. I'd much rather buy Bitcoin in an environment that's conducive to being risk on, where the stock market is going to continue to rally. We've got through the bad parts or the worst parts of the recession. The economic indicators are showing positivity. and you're right. It's not about being bearish or bullish. It's it's sometimes when you've got a stack of cash. I'll give you a classic example. In 2019, I had a all my savings saved up since 2019, and I only decided to deploy that into mid 2020, and then I rotated it all heavily back into altcoins in 2021 for the first time in 2 years, waiting for the right opportunity to pounce on altcoins. And it's the same again. It's just like, yeah, there's some great projects. I look at the market now. I've missed out some really good 4 or 5x's. But that's fine because I know there's going to be an even better opportunity in the next 6 to 12 months. So it's more a matter of patience. It's not about being bullish or bearish. And that's just me as an investor. But as a trader, I want to trade the market both ways, whether that's a day trade or a scalp trade or a swing trade. It varies. But as an investor, I think there's some really fantastic opportunities further down the line, just not here.
Trader Mercury, my friend. Did you finally beat God of War Ragnarok? I see that you're in here, brother. I thought you were going away on your ski trip.
Man, I've never been skiing before, ever. I think maybe you're getting me confused with Pierre or something.
Wait,
I don't know.
wait, I'm sorry. It's mountain climbing. You're going mountain climbing with your dog. That's what it was.
Would it make you feel better if I said yes?
Sure, why not, bro? What's going on, man? It's good to have you up here, man.
What's going on, guys? I gotta say, man, it's nice to just hear like rational thoughts, like not anything cringe, but just like rational thoughts and rational decision making from fellow traders. It just makes me feel warm and fuzzy inside, honestly. No, it's really interesting, a lot of the stuff that you guys are saying. So I think Connor said something about like there's no narrative. I always laugh when people say that because my favorite thing is when I post like a price prediction or like, oh, price is going to do this or whatever, and then someone will reply and be like, well, why is it going to do that? I'm just like, because there's going to be more buyers than sellers. That's why. Like that's the only reason. What other reason do you need? So it's like, for that, that's interesting because I'm a subscriber to the belief that price doesn't need a narrative and the markets don't ever really need a narrative to drive them. I think that, price action will determine the narrative that gets applied to whatever's happening. And that can be, it can work in both ways. So like when price is going down, you're hearing, oh, well, inflation is going up, so Bitcoin should be a safe haven, right? And it's like, it's a narrative that's allowing people to sort of cope with their buys in a downtrend. And it's like, is a narrative ever actually applicable? And how do we quantify that? And it's like, unless you have experience and that sort of intuition, then I don't really see the justification for your narrative. But also what XO was saying was great because he's saying, patience is really what matters and FOMO is never justifiable. And it's like, I almost feel like if I say that, and I had a tweet today that said FOMO is never justifiable. Like there's opportunity is abundant. And if you just look at 2020 alone, you see those kinds of major moves. And you kind of, when you really deeply understand that opportunity truly is abundant, like it is fucking abundant. It is everywhere. And if you're going to cry about missing out on a percentage or, tens of percentages or hundreds of percentages, then you might as well be crying every minute because somewhere in some market, there's always a bull market. So it's like, it doesn't make sense, but it almost feels like when you're the person to say that, you get kind of bashed and people will be like, oh, you're coping, you're missing out. No, I'm not coping. I'm not missing out. I'm being realistic, right? And it's that sort of deep understanding that allows you to make rational decisions in your way that you're approaching the market. But yeah, as far as forecasts go, like what's going to happen in the next 6-12 months, I don't know. I am a subscriber to the echo bubble because my own intuition, my own experience trading the market. I think I might even had a tweet maybe before GC. I don't know. But I am a subscriber to that belief, but only as long as the chart agrees with that. So I'm primarily a trend trader, and that means that I will inevitably be bearish at the bottom, just as I was, and I will be inevitably bullish at the top, just as I was. 69K, your boy was bull posting, and what, 15.6 or whatever, I was bear posting, doom posting just as I was, right? The money, the wealth, right? It's not even money, because I see there's cash, right? You can print cash, and then there's wealth. You generate wealth. I don't make cash. I generate wealth over trends, over time. So from that perspective, I still have to be bullish. My system alone does not allow me to acknowledge any macro idea. What's going to happen in 6 months? Are we going to pull back? Is the RSI bear div, worth noting? I'm not allowed to acknowledge any of that because numbers going to top right corner, and my system agrees with that, right? And so my own arbitrary thoughts, what I'm labeling intuition for my 6 years of experience or whatever, right? Arbitrary thoughts. The market doesn't give a shit about my thoughts, but those thoughts just so happen to agree with my system, which agrees with the way price action has headed ever since 18K or something, right? So it's like I still am able to hold on to that. I can't really start to acknowledge anything too bearish just yet, and it's a beautiful sort of like snowball that has to build and form into something more like a snowman before I can start to take action on any sort of fears, right? Am I fearful that the market is overextended and maybe I'm overexposed? Yeah, absolutely. But in my opinion, there's always a fear to have, right? It's kind of like, it's just like real life. And regardless of what your positioning is, you're always going to be fearful. If you're max exposed, right, or if you're exposed at all, your fear is that number go down. If you're short, your fear is number go up, and maybe you miss out on the rally. Or if you're sidelined, maybe you miss out just in general, right? Regardless, there's always a fear. So am I fearful of that? Yeah, but my system is, catered in such a way that I will be able to adjust if my stupid little 23-year-old arbitrary thoughts don't play out, right? And we don't go to like whatever 40K or whatever absurd in like the next couple months, or right. So it's like the trend is still trending, and I have to be, max bull posting, cringe bull posting as long as, and then until that as long as comes into play, which I could break down, but I'm sure nobody actually cares too much. It's a range deviation, and then loss of the range, and then loss of the hourly 200s, and loss of the 4-hour 200s. And then at that point, I really don't have any more bullish arguments for you. And I will adjust each and every single step of the way, ever so slightly or gradually, and then get called a coping idiot for being bullish at the top, just like I was for being bearish at the bottom. But I digress.
I think what matters is the power of friendship, man. We're all here on a Thursday night talking shop, and that's the good thing, man. Connor, let me tell you, man, it's good to have you up here, my friend.
Thank you, bro.
I want to
I just wanted to
give you a
clarify.
shout.
Oh, thank you. But I just want to clarify
Yeah,
Bear-Produce's point
go
on
ahead.
the narrative thing, because I think some got mixed up. I totally agree if we're talking about like majors and macro and stuff, that the narrative isn't necessary. That was more talking about like the altcoin and shitcoin space we're seeing, like the quote unquote narrative that's running that I think is non-existent. It's just people are using AI and ChatGPT to launch shitcoins, then the rest are just launching ETH Ponzi's and Arbitrum. So like everything, all the 4 to 5x's we're seeing have zero narrative or bull case, and people are just dumping money into easy low liquidity plays. That was my only thing about narrative, but I think I generally agree with you when we're talking about like macro and stuff. But I just wanted to clarify on that.
To add on to that, dude, I think the narrative can be as easy as like, oh, these coins are oversold, like the fair value is slightly higher. Like it doesn't have to be some crazy thesis for shit to pump, And the AI narrative too, it's like, I mean, that is evident obviously, considering that there's a bunch of coins related to AI that have just been ripping, and I think it's probably going to be a big bubble within TradFi too this year or next year whenever we really, really go risk on again. So, I mean, like, you could just take the left curve approach. Like, if it has anything to do with AI,
100%, bro.
you could just risk like 5% and just take a punt. So that's
I'm
kind
a
of what
full
I've been
left
doing, and it's
curver.
been doing great.
Facts. Yeah, no, bro, I'm a full left curver punter all day, but when I look into the projects right now, like I've been punting shit coins for the past 2 years, but when I look into projects, it's all just ChatGPT, AI, and like it's just a tiny little bubble of like a narrative that's working right now because, like you said, AI in and of itself is kind of a bullish thesis. So like people are just kind of running with whatever. But I mean, this thing happens in shitcoin space all the time. Like people die, you make a fucking Trump died shitcoin and that shit pumps. It doesn't really matter what it is. Anyone can pump with anything as long as you make it cool looking and a decent landing page that doesn't look like you'll get rugged. But yeah, that was kind of all I'm saying. But definitely, like, seems to be the environment to take punts in if you have, like, I don't know, the risk tolerance and DOIR time to, like, not get rugged. But yeah, definitely some punt plays out there, and even like the higher level mid caps like Kanto and the Arbitrum plays have been like pretty impressive, especially in the conditions. So definitely, I don't know, keep your eyes peeled. Never know these days.
Get some attention on Caspa since we're talking about nice new technology. I mean, it's already up 2,500%. So I'm not gonna tell anyone to pin now, but I will actually say just take a look at the technology and just like what they're trying to do, and keep an eye on it for when we do start seeing the altcoins come right back down. So just keep that in mind and do some research. I'm not gonna provide any like advice buy or sell, but like it's an interesting protocol to research. It's pretty in line with the original Nakamoto consensus.
Yeah, my only kind of concern right now with the Arbitrum wave and Arbitrum narrative is like it kind of just seems to be all second mover projects, and like they're not really doing anything. They're just kind of like relaunching tokenomics with new names on a cheaper layer and just getting second mover volume, and like that seems kind of pathetic for how far along the space is. And like, I mean, I get like make your money where you can. It's low liquidity, whatever you can pump. There's an Arbitrum narrative. There's an Arbitrum narrative, but at the same time, like I think investors and shitcoiners in the space should be really careful because like there's not really anything holding that up. You know, it's just kind of redoing Ponzi's that failed 1 to 2 years ago on a cheaper chain. So that's my only thing with that is like make your money while you can, but definitely be careful because I'm not exactly sure how long this little train ride has gas in it.
Choo choo.
Yeah, I have to agree with what Connor said. Look, I think in the future on Aptos, on Sui, whichever blockchain network, you're just going to see the same projects that were first developed in Ethereum, like Golem or prediction markets, packaged, deployed on some shit like Aptos, and they'll probably get a run in a bull market, but it's all vaporware at the end of the day. I think fundamentals are important heading into a bull market in terms of positioning, but fundamentals don't mean shit in a bear market. And we saw that with AVAX, we saw that with Solana, Luna, regardless of the market or the macro conditions out there. But that's just my one. So it's just the same bullshit, packaged, rebranded, splattered onto a new chain, and let's just pump this shit to how high we can make it go, essentially.
Yeah, and that's kind of my only reason for like not really taking plays or punts, because like I'm not really seeing anything new that like can really hold its own. When I say narrative wise, it's very loosely, but it's just kind of the best word we have. But like, there's no real new tech or new Ponzi's or I don't know anything besides just relaunches that I'm seeing. So like that's just kind of why I think it's hard for a lot of big money to play right now, or anybody in general, like including myself. I don't really see the RR there to like I don't know get rugged on Arbitrum a few times a day. I don't really get it.
XO, what are you looking at personally as far as new ecosystems, protocols, things of that nature? I know you had mentioned Polkadot, but that was about a month ago. We didn't really get into detail about upcoming consensuses and things of that nature. Are you gonna branch into the GameFi and NFT side of things next cycle? Because to me personally, man, I think it's gonna be like 2017, where all you really have to do is just look at where there's a strong community and look at some developments and see like where a lot of strong BND stuff is going along, and you can pretty much just go into it and grow within the community.
Yeah, pretty much. Look, the last time I did fundamental research was in 2020, which served me well for 2021, right? No, I'm not really overly bullish on Polkadot. I think one of the concerns that I have with Polkadot, if you look at developer adoption there, it's really concerning in my opinion. The amount of money that's been invested in Polkadot, yeah, there's a few good projects, right? If you look at Moonbeam, which is I think it's an EVM, which basically allows some form of EVM, which allows any smart contract to be deployed onto Polkadot. That's fine. You've also got Polkadot, which they've now enabled bi-directional a chain in terms of XCM, cross-chain message swapping, or whatever you want to call that. But again, it comes down to pretty much what you said. It's about who's got the most active development community, who's got the biggest grants, who can really promote those projects and really get a community behind them. Because it's going to be the community, essentially, that's going to be making the most noise with regards to which projects are going to perform well. And I've got my concerns or reservations with Polkadot itself. I think it will be okay, but I think, again, for me, the real key is looking for those rotational plays, right? You look at Solana, you look at Cosmos, you look at Polkadot, but if you're looking at the under the surface of those projects, which of the underlying projects built on those platforms are likely to perform well? I think that's where you can get the really high asymmetric plays, the high beta returns versus the actual main chain itself. In terms of projects, look, I'll be honest with you, this is probably the first time, well, this is the first day I've actually been back at the desk full time since the new year. And probably for the next 3 to 6 months, all I'm going to do is just probably interact with the likes of yourself and other people out there to start researching projects in preparation for the bull market. Because I just think there's no point in me bashing my head trying to trade the markets, futures or derivatives, when I know the asymmetric plays are certainly around the corner in the next 6 to 12 to 18 months. So, I can trade less. I can focus more on research, understand what the space is doing, what the narratives are going to be, what the rotational players are going to be in this sector or in this space, plan ahead, and then deploy some capital, really.
I had a question for XO, because I know you've been around a cycle or few at this point. I kind of had a question or feeling that if we do see a bottom or a new run up, that I think we're kind of going to see more 2017 stuff, and there's going to be a whole new narrative, a whole new wave of L1s. I think people are just going to keep improving our ideas. I think the current, I don't know, top 25 or top 50 or top 150 we see, I think probably get replaced or forked. I don't really see a lot of these coins that are down 50 to 90% that are all competing for the L1 and L2 space, able to compete with people on fresh liquidity with fresh narratives if we really do bottom.
I think
I don't
so.
really see how they fight that fight. They haven't in previous cycles. I don't know why this cycle would be different. I don't know why everyone wouldn't get replaced. I don't know how all the L1s continue to compete after being wrecked so hard with other people coming in with fresh liquidity and fresh narratives. I don't. It feels like it would just repeat what we've seen. I don't know. It seems so hard for projects to even recover from negative 30 to 50%.
Yeah. So look, I've spoken to projects over the last several months that they're literally running out of runway in terms of how much budget they've got left to continue with project development over the next 12 months. And these are projects that launched in 2020, 2021. I'm a developer myself. I've been a developer for 10, 12 years, but I've, turned around to trading full time because this is what I enjoy doing. Ultimately, look, I think it comes down to communities once again, developer community, developer adoption. What type of grants are projects issuing out there to really onboard developers, onboard projects? One of the best ways, I think, if you really want to find some gems, is start paying attention to hackathons, because you really get a real insight as to, okay, which projects out there are very bleeding edge. There's no recognition, but they're looking for some form of grant. They're looking for some form of investment. Even if you can just attend hackathons in America or Europe, you may not be an angel investor or whatever, but at least you get an insight, speak to the team, maybe look for opportunities within the team where you could perhaps do some marketing, some testing, whatever it is. Get yourself involved in the community. That networking is one of the best aspects about this entire crypto space. The opportunities are unlimited. So it's just about finding opportunities where you think you can really add a skill set or a value. Maybe trading is not your strength, maybe research is your strength, maybe technology is your strength. So there's so many opportunities. But ultimately, I think you're right. I think when I look at this space, I'd probably say 90% of the current top 20, 30 won't be there. We'll probably see a few survivors, and they'll get replaced by the new kid on the block in the very near future.
XO, I think you're gonna like this one project. It's called Barachain, and their consensus is proof of liquidity, and it's of course it's built on Cosmos. So I'm gonna give you guys a quick 1 minute show. So unlike most delegated proof of stake consensuses, you can stake multiple assets like Bara, ETH, BTC, stablecoins to a validator. all the while those assets that are staked are being used to provide that liquidity on that chain's native virtualized AMM, right? So basically what that means is essentially like this. The user stakes the assets to secure the network, right? For example, ETH, which is more like single-side liquidity provision. So you can LP that with Honey, which is part of their 3 token NICE system. And the outcome of that is the user stakes to secure the network. There's more capital efficiency, and the end user receives that bearer token through the block rewards, and Ethereum becomes more liquid. So I think as that gets developed, I honestly think it's going to be projects like that that really bring that new wave of innovation in DeFi. They're going to bring in a lot more TVL towards Cosmos, and how that looks like, I think a lot of it's been my own theory, sort of like a game theory, where as the Cosmos Hub grows, not only by a user base but also a dev base, there's going to be a lot more innovation on this fresh new chain, right? And more chains that are going to be built on it, right? Because Cosmos is, Cosmos, right? Atom, it's not really like a chain of itself. There's multiple things built on top of it, right? There's Juno, there's Stargaze. Then of course it's going to be Neutron, things like that. And with Bear Chain, right, combining all of that liquidity, I think once you see something that's never been done before and it actually works, and if you talk to the community, right, if you go on their Discord, you're actively in there, you'll see that, like, dude, this is some pretty cool stuff, man. And I do have a biased approach when it comes to Bear Chain, and I wanna let everybody know that I'm actually gonna audition to be their Ric Flair or Macho Man Randy Savage. So it's gonna be like this. I'm gonna go to a conference and I'm gonna be like, oh yeah, you better watch out, brother, before the Bear Chain Gang runs up on you. And that's what I'm talking about. You got to bring that energy, because if you don't, you're gonna get rugged, right? And if it's a super cycle, you want to be long, right? If it's a super cycle, you want to be long, and if you're not gonna make it. It's just that simple, right? I don't make the rules; I just follow them. So what you gonna do, brother, when the Bear Chain Gang runs wild on you? And that's
If
what
you
I'm
don't
talking
bring
about.
that energy,
So
you're gonna get rugged, bro.
exactly,
How much
man.
how much did they pay you?
None, dude. There's not even like a sale going on.
There's not even a coin.
I don't think they're
He
gonna
just loves Bear.
I don't think they're gonna come out. I don't think they're gonna come out until like second half of 23, first half of 24, and I think that's gonna be for their test net. So they're like a whiles out. Um, but one of their lead guys, Smokey, I saw him one day. He's like, we really need that macho man, sort of professional wrestler, schizo personality type for the Bear Chain Gang, right? So I'm like, Smokey, choose me, right? And he's like, Wabi, we need you. You need to do this, King. So yeah, those guys are fun, man. Trying to have them on a space. But chances are I'm probably going to go on to their community type of podcast, and potentially in the future they'll come on the space as their testnet gets rolled out and everything. I'm a huge fan of all things Cosmos. And also Arbitrum. We're going to have GMX up on the show, as well as Arbitrum later on this month. And a few other ecosystem protocols when it pertains to things like Terra and Cosmos. And again, like I said, Etho too. So look forward to that, guys. XO, what's up, man? My bad, brother.
Robbie,
Go ahead, man.
I want to ask you some questions, probably more for the audience, right? Look, we're heading into a bear market. We've seen the current crypto market get smashed to pieces. But moving forward, right, if I'm an individual who hasn't got, I've got a full-time job, I might have other responsibilities, how does then somebody go about spending time researching about these projects? Where do I go? Because I haven't got time to spend, I'm speaking hypothetically, put myself in somebody else's position. Where do I go? Where do I find this information? If I go to YouTube, I'm just being shown shitcoin projects, right, by the likes of BitBoy or fucking Moon Carl. So what do I need to do? Where is the best place to go? What are your top 3 tips?
So, all right. So the way I would go about this is, first off, see where the innovation is as far as social capital, right? So in the last bear market, it was all about Telegrams and Discord, right? That was the big thing that's in. So if you look at what's going on with Twitter, right, we have Elon Musk, who is the meme coin god, and he's integrated Twitter with Mask Network. And what that enables somebody to do is, I can get something like Azuki's, I can get something like Sappy Seals, put it on my profile, and I can show via authorization of the blockchain that I own that, right? I own that asset, right? And if you take a look at what Elon's done, it's mainly been fintech apps, right? Like what he did with PayPal and the previous company that he tried to do before that. And if he's tweeting about Dogecoin and all those things, I'm going to go on Twitter, right? So the way Elon wants to do this is, right, payments and also some NFT aspects. And you see spaces going on like crazy. So what you want to do is you want to put forth the effort in going into these spaces, right? So if I was the usual, Twitter user and I want to find out about crypto, I would probably run into something like Bitcoin Magazine, right? And then through that, follow people there, see the spaces that they go into, and then they'll probably follow a few VCs. And again, like I said, there is a VC space here on Twitter, and they're usually on like the Aptos and Says and like Arbitrum type spaces, and also Delphi Digital. A lot of their guys go on spaces, and that's where you see the innovation behind the scenes. But if you want a constant stream of information, then you would have to follow a platform that really covers all aspects, right? Like here, because Bitcoin, we cover a multitude of things, right? We cover price action, we cover macroeconomic data, right? And we have many guests that have experience with that macroeconomic data. And then we have myself here at Crypto World Radio. And for me, what I'm trying to do is not only communicate with traders in the community such as yourself and Mercury and what have you, but also like individuals such as Garland Wan, right? That have experience in VC, right? And also individuals that are founders like Rebecca Liao, right? And then I'm also going to have like a few devs from GMX. So it really boils down to, you want to get into various communities where it's not only VC and devs, but also founders and community members such as yourselves, and diving deep into the digital asset space, right? Because it's not just BTC and ETH. There's also DeFi and GameFi, NFTs or Web3, whatever you want to have it, and to have an open mind, really, and to follow people that have been in the industry for a number of years now and could have like a list of references that their word is credible, right? Because there are some people that kind of flip-flop and they don't really have a narrative for what they believe in, right? Like since you've known me, XO, since the first day you've known me, I've been extremely bullish on all things Cosmos, right? All things Cosmos. Anything that's built on top of Cosmos, I think it's going to do absolutely phenomenal. And the proof is in the pudding. Over the last like 2-3 quarters, despite what's been happening over the broader landscape of the world, these people are still building in the background. There are people that still believe in them. Like
Robert, can I stop you there? I'm gonna cut in. You seem really passionate, rightly so as well. It's good to hear your enthusiasm for the Cosmos system. So if I'm sorry to just cut you right out, but I'm going to ask you pretty on the spot. What are your top 5 projects that you're really focusing on in terms of Cosmos? What are the 5 that you're really looking forward to?
Okay. Number 1, it would have to be Celestia. Number 2, it would have to be Saga XYZ. These 2 things are unicorns. They're essentially going to onboard devs and users with the front end user in mind, right? The individual, and they're focusing on social capital that hasn't been brought in yet. They are focusing on the individual that's playing Fortnite, that's playing Call of Duty, that is playing these Discord games. They are not catering to us individuals trading price action, right? Or say like DeFi, what have you, right? They're wanting to attract the individuals that like the clean UIXs, the individuals that like easy mobile integration. And that's what they're focusing on. They're focusing on things like that. And also the component of bringing in, right, that software SDK into a hardware implement, right? They're looking, 10 to 15 years, right? When augmented reality, which is what I believe the metaverse is going to be, right? With things like Shibuya, I think that's going to be the future of it. Number 3, like I said, Bear Chain, right? I've already explained that. Number 4, Say Network. I've already explained that.
Could you tell me what Say Network is? Is it a layer 1, layer 2? What is it?
It's basically a layer 1. It's basically like Solana on Cosmos, if that were to make sense. So it's basically things like exchanges. You can bring in the equity markets onto decentralized apps, right? You can sort of create like a DeFi hybrid on it, and that's essentially like the TLDR. I will be having a space with them in the coming week, so I don't want to like spoil it too much. But
so can I summarize? Is it basically a framework built on top of Cosmos? Essentially, what you're saying, that
yeah, pretty much. Like you'll be able to trade money markets on it. Like the framework
Right.
that say like you'll be able to trade money markets on it, and things of that nature. And the fifth one would have to be Neutron. They're building out, as I said, the DeFi infrastructure on the Cosmos Hub. So things like the Algo stable coins and all that stuff will be able to fully be implemented out, and you'll be able to have like an Aave or Maker type of platform. They're going more towards a Maker type of framework, and I think that's going to bring again like a lot of TVL onto Cosmos. And I did host Neutron on a space last month, so you guys can check that out. Same thing with Saga, and yeah, those are my top 5 as far as.
Are they your
ahead.
top 5 projects, or top 5 projects that you want to invest in?
Top 5 projects in Cosmos, and I do have a bias for these projects. I think Celestia and Saga are unicorns, absolute unicorns. Same thing with Shibuya. But if you want to, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna add on about Saga, since you mentioned Polkadot, Trader XO. So you're familiar with parachains on Polkadot, right?
Yeah, parachains, what is it? Parachains and slots.
Yeah,
Paraslots?
parachains and slots.
And,
Well, Saga is
yeah.
basically doing that, but I think it's a way more like streamlined version, because they have something called chainlets, right? Which is essentially, it's functionally the same thing, but you were talking about how, like, dev power and how different devs know different languages. Well, with Saga, it's Rust, Solidity, and Move. Like any different language can be coded for a chainlet, and then Saga mainnet validates those chainlets. So it's pretty cool. So like it can onboard any dev from any ecosystem, because you don't have to know a specific language to code on there. So that's one reason I think it's super bullish. And then they have a bunch of grants and dev programs where they have a whole program where they're teaching devs like essentially how to code and like how to fill in the gaps in their knowledge of what they need to learn. And so I think that's really cool. And that's one reason that we're fundamentally bullish on it. And then also,
So can I? Sorry to cut you off there. Just a quick question I want to fit in. So are you basically saying it's kind of like the Moonbeam of Cosmos, where you can deploy any smart contract, and it can be deployed via Saga. So it sits on top of Saga, and Saga does all the interaction with the Atom Cosmos chain. Is that what you're alluding to there? Similar to how Moonbeam would be for Polkadot?
yeah, that's basically it. You pretty much got the gist of it.
But they also have their own ecosystem. That's the other thing as well, and they are ready. They are ready to go. Like when they release, they will have dozens upon dozens of products built on top of it. And like again, if you go back and listen to the space, it's basically like a sit down with Saga XYZ. Like the vision for Saga is to essentially connect to Web 2, to hardware components for things like augmented reality. They're focusing on onboarding the next, again, 100 million users. They're focusing on multiple years down the line. And if you've looked at the amount of business and development stuff that has been going on lately, and mind you, I came across them back in September, right? I've been in contact with them for weeks now, and now is when you're starting to see these things flesh out. So you want to try to, like, if you're not comfortable getting into any narrative or whatever, you don't feel like longing or shorting or whatever, then just look at things that you think can bring in new value, right? Because it's the new value that sets us to that next epoch, right, of growth. And every cycle, there is always some sort of innovation, right? 2013, right? That cycle in 2013 brought forth alternative payment solutions, right? Litecoin, XRP, privacy with things like Monero, what have you. Then 2017 brought forward smart contracts. And then after that, it brought forth DeFi, atomic swaps, borrowing and lending, and a little banking system, if you will. And towards the end, you saw some normie friendly stuff like metaverse, NFTs, and all that stuff. And the next wave of innovation, I truly believe it's going to be things that cater to the end user, to the normie. So things that focus around, AAA quality type of games. And you have to pay attention to the dev system around it. And, Cosmos does have a history of having good product, right? Binance is built on top of the Cosmos SDK. Dude, when UST depegged, the Cosmos chain still worked perfectly. If that is not indicative of strength and the amount of, of dev power, then I don't know what is. Because if something were to happen to DAI, right, or Maker, then truly I don't know what would happen to Ethereum, right? And if you take into account, listen to me, if you take into account the amount of damage that was done from the Anchor protocol, right, and you realize the amount of TVL and the amount of, I hate using this word because it's kind of stupid, but contagion, right? And that ecosystem still continued on working perfectly, and you're still having chains pump out left and right, then there's something to be said about that. There is something to be said about that, and I think it has to be acknowledged. And I think that's where Cosmos has the edge. And I would encourage everybody to, as you asked me, XO, if I was, a brand new user, what would I do? Right? There is a wonderful button that looks like a microphone. It's the spaces button. You click on it, and then you'll have a search bar. And it says search for space name, host name, type in some keywords. Type in crypto, type in DeFi, type in Bitcoin, type in macro at various points throughout your day. You will see upcoming spaces. You will see live spaces, right? And you'll see previous recordings. So with spaces, you want to think about it like that little search tab. You want to think about it as the Google search engine for information, right? Where you see these, like, you can call them radio stations or what have you. You can call them podcasts, because essentially this is what this is, right? What I am doing here, because Bitcoin is essentially a live podcast, right? So when you click on the little tab for spaces and say it's 9 a.m. Eastern time and you type in because Bitcoin, you'll see three spaces. You'll see market check 11 a.m. Eastern time. You'll see market talk 4:15 p.m. Eastern time, and then you'll see Crypto World Radio. And there are many profiles that kind of work through that same framework, right? Where they're scheduled, you're able to see them, and there are certain keywords, right? Macro, crypto, DeFi, Bitcoin. So I think it's a bit easier now. Whether it's before XO, I mean, you know how it was. It was, going on YouTube and then finding Telegram and Discord links for projects, and you were kind of left in the dust. There was no spaces. There were no AMAs. It was truly deep in the trenches. And I think it's becoming more easier to onboard new users into crypto and Web3, whatever label you want to put it in. So those are sort of like my thoughts on that.
Bro, I'm just going to be really real with you guys. Look, I think all these projects sound great. By the end of the day, they don't really solve any real world problem. It's just fucking speculation. It's just an experiment. At the end of the day, if it sticks and it works, happy days. But yeah, look, I don't mean to be a pessimist here. I'm just trying to keep it really real. But ultimately, they're great opportunities to trade in the bull market or buy and invest. But you've got to sell that shit eventually, and that's just the harsh reality. No matter how much we glamorize these projects. But sorry to burst your bubble there, Wabi. With all due respect, man, I used to be like that. I used to love the tech. I was a big fan of Stratus and Lisk, and fucking held that shit all the way back down in 2018. Didn't get me very far, but here we are 4 or 5 years later.
I mean, while we're kind of in the bubble bursting, I think XO asked a really interesting question for new users and new researchers. And I kind of have, like, I don't know, not to be the other pessimist, but I kind of have almost opposite take from my time in CT since 2017. I think since the FTX crash, this is the least, I don't know if it's the new Twitter algo or everyone got wrecked or whatever, but this is the least active, the least alpha, the least entertaining I've seen CT in a while. Maybe that's just me. but I think the new CT user and new CT researcher has way harder of a time finding free good alpha, free good accounts, with everyone being privatized, everyone being kind of already wrecked and not really willing to give out alpha. I think these are way harder conditions than we came up in a few years ago and even a few months ago. I mean, I think we're being realistic. I mean, these is one of the few spaces that is very positive and optimistic and has some alpha in here. And I'm very excited that it still exists and you guys are killing it. But at the same time, like, we have to be realistic about the space, you know, like, and where things are going and how things actually feel. And in my opinion, I think we're looking at a lower population on CT that isn't, I don't know, too happy. And I don't know. That's just, I don't know if it's the algo or what's going
Connor,
on.
I wish.
But
Connor, I can see what you're seeing, man, but that's just not the case, man. When I tune into these ecosystem spaces, these dev spaces, they're massive, man. The amount of interaction, like it just it pumps me up, it makes me excited, and I'm optimistic about the future. And that's just me. And I see we've gone on for an hour and a half. If anyone wants to come up, feel free to do so. My name is Wabi. I host these spaces almost every day. At least I try to be entertaining for you guys, feed you guys some good takes with my boy Payne. We're here joined by good friends of the show, EXO, Mercury, Damiano. I see Bashara's here. Connor's joining us. Feel Payne as always. I also see we have Avocado brother. Um, what's going on, man? Good to have you up here, man. Thank you for joining us.
Hey, Wabi, thanks. Yeah, I mean, I think we're getting towards the end, but really fired us up with that speech, so feeling good.
Mercury, I saw you had your hand up, brother. What's going on, man?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, well, I mean, you know me, Wabi. I don't, dabble in fundamentals at all. As far as I go, it's BTC and ETH, and then that's about it. And then maybe like BNB or something. But so it's really interesting to hear you guys talk about fundamentals. But I actually have like this dogma that fundamentals in crypto is like a fallacy. Like, they actually don't matter. Like, and maybe I'll be able to prove my point and maybe not. But how many people here know and can tell me without Googling it what Cardano does? Like,
Cardano is just basically layer one. It's a competitor to Ethereum, essentially, where it's a framework which allows you to build smart contract platforms, products, which, just think of what Ethereum is, but Cardano has its own unique way, or blockchain protocol consensus mechanism in what it believes is more efficient. But essentially, look, again, Cardano, whatever it is, it doesn't really matter, really. It's all about network adoption. I remember back in 21, there was a protocol or framework called Have the Network. Everybody was talking about it, but there was nobody fucking developing on there. So what good is a glossy framework? But back to your point, Mercury, I really have to respectfully not disagree with you, but I think, look, me being a trader that I am, back in 2020 and even in 2018, I really do switch from being a trader to a fundamentalist prior to a bull market rally, because it allows me to position into some really, really solid plays. I'm generally not blowing my own trumpet. I'm just trying to give you some examples, but I really call into some really big plays, Lena Protocol, or whatever it's called. Terra Virtua, again, I got that 4 cents that went to 120. There's a shitload of plays that I got into really, really early, which I openly shared on my timeline back in October 2020, November 2020, and they were already on the exchanges. So it does pay. I mean, even with Polkadot, I was heavily talking about Polkadot at $2-3. Bought it there, went to 40. Talked about Kasama Network again because of the whole hype around parachains. So really, in this space, what you have to think about is when you're looking at these projects, it's not rocket science. You've really got to just connect the dots, join the dots, and try to think outside the box. And I'll give you a classic example. If Ethereum goes on another big run and reaches $5,000-$6,000, what do you think is going to happen to the other chains? Because the gas fees are going to become very expensive on Ethereum. So therefore, you've got to look at the other alternate L1s. It might be Aptos, it might be Sweet, it may not be Solana anymore. Maybe AVAX loses its market share. So you've just got to think for those narratives. Well, if something happens to Ethereum where the gas price is too high, then I can see a shift where people are going to start using other chains. So let me go buy that coin instead and rotate from Ethereum to those chains, etc., etc.
Yeah, no, I totally understand that. And I see your point is that, you're saying you wouldn't have been able to get into those had you not done that fundamental analysis. I have a totally different approach where, okay, my biggest flaw in the most recent bull market was that I was too lazy, right? I didn't do that fundamental analysis. I still did extremely well for myself just using TA. And to like back to my point, you just told me that no one really uses Cardano, nobody's developing on it, yet it has a $14 billion market cap, right? And it's like, it's more that it's still here just because of the notoriety. You say Cardano to any crypto native, or you just say ADA, and they know exactly what you're talking about. Like, I'm pretty sure that all of us joined crypto, and probably one of our first bags was Cardano. If you were a 2017 native, you probably bought
Or
Cardano at some
XRP.
point and thought it was going to $5.
Yeah, one of those.
And
Litecoin,
Yeah.
baby.
and here it is today.
The reason is because if you're a noob entering the market for the first time and you've got $1,000 and you look at this coin and you think, shit, it's 1 cent. If this could hit 100 cent, $1, that's an 100x. I'm going to apply my $1,000 here versus
Yeah,
buying
that's
Bitcoin.
my point.
Yeah.
So it has nothing to do with the fundamentals. And here it is for, $14 billion market cap. And I could not tell you what it does. Now, granted, I don't use fundamental analysis, but
I think the times have changed because back then I used to watch fucking Superman. I'm sure you all remember Superman from 2017, and he used to heavily talk about Cardano, Neo, fucking Lisk, Stratus, and all these other projects. That was my first real taste of fundamental analysis, and it just happened to be that whatever he called it, fucking flew because we were in a bull market. I thought, yeah, this guy's really, he knows what he's talking
You
about.
forgot Ian Bellino, brother. He is the king.
I didn't really follow Ian Bellini because that guy was more about ICOs, right? I thought, and I used to think, oh fuck it, man, I wish I could get into ICOs. How come he's always getting into fucking ICOs, etc., etc. And so you kind of have that animosity and hatred towards like fucking prick. He got into ICX at what 5 cents and he went to $10, and so you can yeah.
EXO, he put Matic on the map. For those of you who are
He
not
did.
aware,
He did.
Matic was found by Ian Bellina, and what used to happen was in 2018, 2019, more like 2018, Ian Bellina would host a crypto world tour, and there would be pitch decks where products would come up on stage, 5 to 10 minutes, and Ian found Sandeep. They connected, and at the time, Ian was well connected within the industry, and Matic was put on the map. So there is alpha, gentlemen. There is alpha in going out to these conferences and seeing these like smaller incubated products within the digital asset space ecosystem. And I am of the belief that that potential is found within the Cosmos ecosystem, without a shadow of a doubt, gentlemen. That is my thesis.
I mean, look at
and I'm
Kanto,
excited
dude.
for the
You
year.
can't. Kanto's built on
Yeah,
Cosmos, and no one even
yeah.
knows it.
And Kanto reminds me of what? It reminds me of Thorchain back in 2019, late 2019, Q2 2020, this obscure layer one, has like a weird UI and all that, has like a cult behind the group. But I'm also a big fan of Brent, who's sort of like the meme behind the project. He's like a doggy profile. Like he gives some pretty good alpha. You guys should follow him. I'll try to have him up on a space. He's an individual that I've followed for a while now. But see, we have DC. DC, what's going on, my man? Oh, and before I bring it over to DC, for the individuals that are not aware, Cardano was actually started off as a GameFi product, as a GameFi, NFT type of product. And for those of you who don't know, again, NFTs actually came out in 2016, as far as Ethereum is concerned, with CryptoPunks, which is it was a free mint. It was a free mint, close to free at that. But if you look at what's going on in Cardano, they're having some NFT stuff on the side, and they've captured a lot of the Asian audience, which I believe will attribute to the next run when it pertains to the next cycle of innovation, GameFi and Metaverse and all that stuff. DC, what's going on, my man? Welcome to the stage.
Hey, I appreciate it, Wobby. Thank you for the spaces you do. And I wanted to share two things. Can you hear me fine?
Yeah, you're good, brother. You're good, man. You're good.
Okay. So I'm fairly new to crypto, right? I've been here like a little over a year, and there's two things that I've noticed. So you can really look at the FA, right? But for a project to gain any traction, it needs a lot of the influencer, pushing the product on Twitter, right? And I see it, and I didn't see it at the beginning when I first started, and as I've gotten down the hall, I see it a lot more, and I see the rotation of how, and it's not all of them, right? It's not all of them, but you can see how everything rotates and each one is pumping specific things, right? And then second, the private telegrams and private discords, with sharing the alpha with private seats and everything like that. That those backdoor deals, those are still happening. You can still see how some people get early in a project, right, in the seed and the private rounds. The project goes public, it pumps 10x, and then that's your exit liquidity for everybody that got in on the private seat. I am seeing it, like more and more. So it's, you know, um,
Yeah, DC,
it's
with regards to the latter, I understand where you're coming from, but you also have to appreciate now, I think a lot of projects have wisened up and the vesting schedules have changed. A lot of these vest teams have got like a 6 to 12 month lock in for projects to circumvent that happening. I think projects have learned from previous mistakes where it is primarily VCs, they get large allocations, they dump it on the market. Okay. So I think that's one thing that you really have to look at now is that when you're looking to buy these projects where there's been seed level or private level deals, look at their vesting schedule and then ascertain whether, okay, is there a lot of risk in this project? Is it going to get dumped on the market? Essentially, I think that's probably one of the best ways you can protect and circumvent yourself against these pump and dump projects where
yeah.
VCs have a big ticket allocation in them.
And I think there's so many new tools that were not available like a year ago, because now you can see so many things, like the bubbles, and you can see all these news, and there's a lot of information that you can see. But before, obviously, you didn't understand. A lot of people didn't understand, the rounding seats and the vesting time. The moment I see a vesting time of 1 day after the public sale, like I understand exactly what's going on, and you're seeing a lot of more information about it. So yeah.
Avocado, go ahead, brother. See you have your hands up, man.
Hey, I was going to go back to the whole narrative thing from a while back. I mean, I think like narrative, I think matters a lot more nowadays, just because the more retail you have coming in, basically the less research people tend to do, right? The average person does less research. They rely on other people's opinions, and so the influencer becomes more important. I think that's more the case for alts, right? Like BTC and ETH are always going to be price action driven, and so the narrative is going to follow the price, like some of you guys said. But I think for alts, it's kind of the opposite, where the influencers kind of set the tone and the narratives, and then those narratives basically happen because that causes people to click buttons, and so that causes price action on those. So that's kind of the way I view things. But yeah, just looking back to that conversation we had before.
So I have something to add to that. So I think back in May of 2021, don't quote me on that, but I think in May of 2021, everything was stalling out or getting ready to stall out. I think BTC was ranging in like I don't know, 5-6% range, and alts were still rallying. And the narrative on Twitter at the time was Ethereum Classic is going to rally because something had happened with retail in US, and the narrative was that US retail is going to come in and buy Ethereum Classic instead of Ethereum because it's cheaper, quote unquote, that unit bias kind of thing. So that was the narrative. And then I believe Ethereum Classic did like a 500% move in like 2 weeks. And then Ki Young Ju, I might have butchered his name, but he's the the founder of Crypto Quant, I believe, he put out the volume statistic for Upbit, which is a Korean exchange. And at the time, the 24-hour volume for Ethereum Classic accounted for like something ridiculous, like 30% of the volume traded within the past 24 hours. And it was more than Binance. And let's say, just for example, Upbit had like $14 billion in 24-hour volume on Ethereum Classic. And then Binance, the second highest, had like 8 billion. So it blew it out of the water. So obviously the narrative, when your top two 24-hour volume exchanges are Upbit, a Korean exchange, and then Binance, an exchange that doesn't allow US users, then clearly the US retail narrative is not what's actually driving price. But had you logged into Twitter and followed all of these, Western and English speaking, influencers, then that's the narrative you had to subscribe to, because number was going up, right? So you had no other choice but to believe that, yeah, US retail, like at that point, you tell me US retail's buying, you can tell me Koreans are bidding, you can tell me it's unit bias, you can tell me a koala is stuck in a tree somewhere in Australia and somehow that's bullish to you. Like, I'm going to believe you. So it doesn't matter what the narrative is at that point. But yeah, that was just, so my point is, it's not so much the narrative, it's how do you quantify it? How do you determining that your narrative is actually what's playing out? Because if something as tangible as volume statistics is able to be misinterpreted or skewed, then how is it that you can take something less tangible, like, I don't know, I don't have an example on me right now, but something that isn't able to be backed up by any sort of statistic, and how are you able to apply that and tell me that that's what I need to be listening to, like a koala stuck in a tree? How are you quantifying that? And it's like, the only way to quantify that truly, and this is the problem that I ran into when I tried to do fundamental analysis, is that you need that experience. So, and I'm not saying that's not the case for TA either, but it's that you have to be able to, sort of take in that information and digest it to a deeper extent than the people that you're, in this PvP market with. So it's like, to me, it's just everything is a social experiment, and we're given these assets and we're told what it does, and then it's on us to price them. And that is the definition of markets. And that goes for BTC, that goes for Cardano, that goes for Ethereum Classic, that goes for everything. It's all just a social experiment in my head. And I'm just able to further validate why I'm holding on to and feel as though this social experiment of an asset deserves to be priced higher because of my own justification, my depth of understanding for those fundamentals for that particular asset.
Gentlemen, I want to bring attention to somebody in the crowd. I see Joe Wong in the crowd, and he's incubated a lot of things from the Polkadot ecosystem.
I think you're covering your mic, Wabi.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, you're good now.
All right. I see Mr. Joe Wan is in the audience, and he's incubated a lot of products within the Polkadot and Kusama ecosystem. Mr. Wong, I've invited you to speak. If you want to come up and share your thoughts as far as to what you're seeing in the VC space when it pertains to the parachain and canary chain ecosystems in Kusama and Polkadot, would love to hear your thoughts. We were just talking about DOT and its ecosystem about an hour ago with Trader XO. We love all things digital assets. And if anyone here just came into the space or is new, my name is Wabi. I host these spaces pretty much every day at 7 p.m. Eastern time, sometimes a little bit later, a little bit earlier, depending on the guests that we have on the show and also scheduling issues. And feel free to follow us here at Because Bitcoin here on Twitter and turn on bell notifications if you enjoy this type of crypto specific content. And we also have other streams throughout the week, such as Market Check with our CEO, Max, and also our analysts, Snorlax and Premise. And then we have Market Talk with our boy Carter, who goes over the U.S. equity markets and has guests from the more broader macroeconomics field, such as Joe Carlisaire and also Dr. Jeff Ross. Always a good conversation. And then myself, where I cover all things digital assets. Could be Bitcoin, could be crypto, could be NFTs and GameFi. I've been in the space for a little over 5 years now, and we're passionate about sharing with the community about all things financial markets. So, Mr. Wong, if you want to come up, feel free to do so. Would love to have you. And same thing for anybody else. We're just having a casual conversation. So, XO, I know you had your hand up, man. Go ahead, brother.
Apologies, it's just by mistake. Somebody else can take over.
I wanted to add to Mercury's point. I mean, I think it's pretty awesome that like you can have fundamentals work and TA. I don't think there's necessarily a correct way to trade the market. Like I think whatever has a better success rate for you is what you should do, right? And so if you find that you're actually really good at looking at charts and, you know, predicting and anticipating where the price is going to go, then obviously you should probably stick to that. But I think that you're kind of doing yourself a disservice by not paying attention to any sort of fundamentals because, I mean, there's a lot of super, super easy trades you can take just based off of fundamentals. And it doesn't have to be like, oh, this technology is going to change the financial ecosystem or anything. Like, why is the reason Canto pumped, for example? Canto pumped because there's no VCs, so the overhead supply is like extremely limited. And then it's a fresh chart, so it's basically in price discovery and people can, you know, speculate on that, and there's no sort of like quote unquote price ceiling. And then it was doing more volume than things that had like 10x the market cap, right? On their decks. So people were just looking at it and going, oh, this is like basically objectively undervalued relative to the amount of users. And it was that simple. And then it did like a 20x from the low. And so I think it could be something as simple as that, or like from the DeFi side, I went pretty big on Aave in December just because the TVL was way bigger than the market cap. So I looked at that and I was like, man, it's objectively undervalued. There's more money in this protocol than there is than what the token is worth. So it should be worth more. And that was a great trade for me. And so I think it doesn't have to be something super complicated, but just doing like super basic research can really help you out. And it could probably confirm your bias on the TA side.
Yeah, no, that's totally fair. But to that, I just say I just follow people that are better at that stuff than I am, and you know, people who I respect. And you know, XO asked Wabi, how is it that you know a newbie could come in and research some of the stuff? Well, my way of researching is by my Twitter following. I mean, honestly, I've curated, and some of the people that I follow, I just have them muted because I'm friendly with them. I'm mutuals, but I don't care what they have to say via what I need to be digesting, what I don't already know. So it's like I've curated my own timeline of what I deem alpha, and that's how I'm able to find those plays with, you know, because I don't have always the time to be able to do my own fundamental analysis and trade my own system and do the things that I want to do in my little TA, you know, moving average world. So, yeah. But no, you're totally fair point, and I think you're absolutely right.
I think the key is I'm very fortunate to have lived in this space for 7-8 years nearly. I've worn the hat of being the individual who started in this space with no TA skills and just being a fundamentalist, having then evolved into appreciating fundamentals with technical analysis and then going fully fledged trader. But ultimately, it's very simple. If you want to make money in this space, you've got to have a very good grasp for fundamentals. I myself, later in the year, will not be trading as actively because I know the asymmetric plays are on these shitcoins, and I don't have to trade. I just have to buy and hold, and hopefully they go 10, 20, 30x. That's it. But the technical aspect, this is where my technical skills come, where most people got screwed in 2022. They don't recognize danger. They don't understand the importance of risk management. And as a result of what I went through in 2018, where a classic example was, you know, I bought something like 5-7 Bitcoins. I plowed into a shitcoin. I literally 20x my Bitcoin holdings in the space of 3-4 months. Did I take profit? No. Did I manage my risk properly? No. I literally suffered a 70% drawdown. Pretty much what we've seen in 2022 with a lot of people out there. So my advice would be is when it comes to fundamentals, pre-bull market, follow the right people, join the right spaces, stay active, proactive, understand what projects are likely to perform well. But then when the market's cooking really hot, really start paying attention to traders who are giving you warning advices that the market's overcooked, or maybe pay attention to macro, because at that point, you want to start thinking about taking profit or tightening your stops. That's literally it. Once the market does that, take your profits, get the fuck out, wait another 2 years, and play the same cycle again in 2, 3, 4 years' time. But ultimately, I'll say time and time again, the asymmetric plays in altcoins are unparalleled. It's the best opportunity you're going to get, where you can take $5,000, $10,000, plow it into 2, 3 altcoins, they all pop off 20, 30x. The chances are, if you're not very technically skilled in trading, you're never going to make that type of money as a trader, because it takes fucking years to acquire that skill set, 5, 6, 7 years to really become profitable, and it's not easy either. So take the easy money, take the easy route, but be sensible about it.
I wanna actually add, if I can, real quick, and then I think Avocado wants to speak. But I want to say, I think it's an underrated skill, and I hear this debate often, even in the equity space, of technical versus fundamental and momentum. And I think that the best traders and investors have a grasp of both. And I think what Mercury said actually is a very good point. And Wabi was trying to say this as well, but leveraging Twitter, and not only just for spaces, but even just learning how to use the search bar and doing advanced searches, and will save you a ton of time. And a good way, actually, a tip is to exactly that: curate, find who's doing it better already. And then actually they have services where you can just, let's say you want to read a thread, but you don't have the time to read it, but maybe you're driving to work or something and you can listen. You can use a text to speech, or you can use some of these services and basically translate those threads and those things and listen to it in an audio form, and really, leverage technology once you've curated a good list. And I think hearing you both speak is awesome, because we have a great technical trader and a great fundamentalist. And I really see the value of both, especially in a time where it's very polarized. You see a lot on one side, a lot of people saying fundamentals are garbage, and then you have fundamentalists saying TA doesn't work. It's speculative based. It only works after. And really, when you know both, that truly is the best, especially in a sector where a lot of people don't. And I understand that not everybody has the same time, but there are ways, especially with technology, to give yourself that edge if you can optimize your time in the manner I'm saying, like whether it's listening, reading, or just finding people who are really good, and even just absorbing the content over time. You might not understand it all right away, but if you do find the people who do understand it better than you, and you're constantly absorbing why they're making these theses and how they're doing it, what their methodology is, you will still be learning over time. And so I just wanted to point that out.
Yeah, I've got a little bit of, I guess, maybe slightly contrarian view on the fundamentals. So I think, if I had to put things in order of importance, price action, sentiment, narrative, fundamentals. I feel like fundamentals is sort of last in the space, just because. Look at the top 10, right? We have XRP, we've got Cardano, and we've got Doge in the top 10. So just time after time in this space, I've seen that the best tech does not really become, it does not really translate into price action really, or into ROI necessarily. The best tech, it doesn't necessarily become the most valuable. And the other problem I find with kind of fundamentals is that, a lot of this tech is very new, obviously. It's kind of untested. A lot of these projects are doing things that even academics haven't been able to do, or basically academics haven't really settled the science on, right? So it's kind of hard to even have experts that you can lean on to say, is the Byzantine is the Byzantine generals problem solved, or is it better for this project versus that project? Is the throughput of this project better than this project, even though it's only been in testnet, or hasn't really been deployed with any kind of huge amount of real life activity. So I feel like that's how I would kind of define fundamentals, those kinds of things. So maybe my definition is a bit wrong, but over time I feel like those particular traits of a project have kind of almost been the least important in determining how well a project does, and other things have been more important. But that's just kind of been my take on things.
And I have to say, I kind of agree. I think the true answer is you have to have a mixture of some things that XO already said, which is fundamentals can help you. And if you are looking to be a technical trader, you're probably not going to be able to outperform some of these altcoins that you would be able to get into if you're using fundamental analysis and you're able to justify your thesis that way, because that gives you a deeper understanding of both that asset and competitors in that sort of asset class in that sector of whatever is competing, and then you can kind of give yourself a reasonable area of where that asset should be fairly valued at, right? And I don't think there's a way to really be able to out trade that consistently. I'll be the first person to admit that. I have my own way of attributing a context to those kinds of things where, again, not to my own horn, but your boy bought Harmony One Chain at 17 sats in March of 2020, or somewhere in 2020. So it's like I'm still able to find myself into those kinds of plays, but it's just a different way of approaching that. And then to balance that, you do have to have a way of getting out. You can't always, because like XO said, your fundamentals are not going to mean shit when price starts to head to that bottom right corner. It's just not going to matter. And you've seen that, and you will continue to see that. It's not going to mean anything. And you may not even know it. And maybe some coins launched sometime in 2022 and they had the greatest fundamentals ever, but just simply because of price action, they got absolutely destroyed and they were never even given a chance to thrive. I'm talking about maybe some coins that we don't even know of that just didn't make it through the initial sort of test. They could have had the greatest fundamentals ever. You have to have that sort of balance of being able to attribute some sort of fundamental analysis, but also knowing via something technical, something a little bit more tangible that you can see like on a chart, which tells you, hey, maybe it's time to get out. Or maybe you're using sentiment, right? You're doing social media gauging on Twitter, whatever it is, but you have to have some sort of way other than fundamental analysis to be able to sort of give yourself a safety net, because otherwise you kind of creep up a little bit too close to the line of like a maxi. And there are lots of maxis out there and there's not lots of successful maxis, right? So it's like you don't want to be a maxi because that puts you in a really susceptible position. So I think the true answer is just have a sort of balance between those kinds of things.
I just want to add one thing. We all focus on the upside of fundamentals on projects in altcoin season and altcoin rallies, but people don't understand that if you are half decent at trading, if you've taken an altcoin and done 20x on the way up, what's stopping you from selling it near the top, waiting patiently for distribution, open up a 1x leverage short, trade it all the way back down again? That's double alt season for you all day long. But many people sleep on that opportunity. They're waiting for the big turn up. So just my 1 cent there. If you can adapt to that mindset, you'll be in a much better position when it comes to taking profit and thinking about the opportunity and the money that you can make on the way back down as well.
Yeah, and I think I'm a great person to speak to that because I don't do that. So I purely am just long biased. And I think that the answer for me, at least personally, I can't speak for other people, but I can only imagine that other people are able to relate to my sort of psychology, is that I'm purely an optimist in nature. And I would imagine that most of us are. So for me, it feels just naturally easier to just see green via price going up and, the environment sort of thriving. I truly think that sentiment trading is mostly just a meme because, I think that there's a sort of paradox where at the top we're talking about euphoria, and in actuality, is everybody euphoric? Okay, maybe mostly, but there are also, for every single person that is buying, there's someone selling, right? Or there's someone shorting. So it's someone is in pain somewhere. And when we're trading at $17,000 Bitcoin or whatever, and I sold at 60K, do you think that I am in fear? Do you think I'm in capitulation? No. So it's like, for me, it's just able to grasp my own emotions better when price is going up, and it's just drastically more difficult to be able to navigate the downside as well, especially from a burnout standpoint, where I have spent, the past 2 years or so spending every single, hour of every day, not actually, but I'm grinding my ass off trying to find these coins that are going to go up many hundreds of percentages and, trading trends or whatever. And then I have to do the exact same thing on the way down. And it's just a constant sort of grind. Now, maybe that means that I'm lazy, but it's just drastically more difficult.
So I wanted to ask you, since you asked me, what are some top 5 projects that I'm looking at? Since you've said that you're back at the desk for the first time since 2020, as far as fundamental analysis
2023.
goes, what
Yes,
what are you? What are some things that you're looking at?
oh man, I don't know. I really don't know. I think it's probably a question I could answer in 3-4 weeks' time. I really need to do my research, if I'm honest with you, and yeah, let's see where we are in 4 weeks' time. If I'm a betting man, I would say the market, especially altcoins, are going to be lower than where they are right now, the ones that I've pumped. So I'd put my money on towards the end of the month, or at least in March, we'll probably see a fairly significant retracement on altcoins. I'm sticking with my guns that most altcoins have a 5 to 7, or maybe at a real push, in 8 weeks market cycle in a bear market from everything I've seen historically. So could be wrong, but I think it's a good time to start researching.
Exo, and with you being a participant in other markets, right, commodities, U.S. equities, and all that stuff, if you take a look at something like Injective Protocol, right, something else that's built on top of Cosmos, they're building derivatives exchanges, right, on ETH-L2s as well. So, do you think that would be something that would partake your interest? Perhaps adding in the user that's trading like commodities on traditional brokerages, right? So what would you say to that? Because one thing that I want to accomplish with some of these spaces is asking individuals that are come up here on our stage and sort of inquire, how do we bring in those next 100 million users? That's sort of my magic target, right? 100 million users, because that's what really takes this industry to the next level, in my opinion. Bringing in those people from TradFi, right? um Outside of like the web 2 users, right, individuals that like to play games, that like to use these sort of like Fortnite, and also augmented reality sort of experiences. There's also the TradFi aspect of it, which is where individuals like yourself come in, right? So
Yeah,
is
but
that something that would appeal to someone in that field that you're in?
no, I don't think it would, if I'm honest with you, simply because there's no utility behind the token. We're not buying a stock or a share which pays us dividends. These are all shit coins, which ultimately, let's be honest, Wabi, these coins, with all due respect, I call them shit coins just out of pun, but these altcoins that we have, right? Do these blockchains really need an altcoin? No, but it's a mechanism or a way of raising money, and very easily, and as much as they want. That's all. That's the only purpose they serve. It offers no utility or value accrual. Um, so back to your question about onboarding, what was it, 100 million users? I can't see why anybody would want to touch this when they can just buy stocks, or stocks are going to pay, or stocks or shares are going to pay dividends. So ultimately, I just see altcoins as a way of making money, and then hopefully cashing that out, whether it's to fiat or whether it's to buy more Bitcoin. That's all it is, really, in my opinion. But back to your question, on a project such as Injective Protocol, yes, I'm very bullish on that one. It's one I've got earmarked simply because I know the fact that Jump Crypto invested $20 million, I believe, and I think there's Brevin Howard, a big global international fund, multi-billion-dollar fund, has also invested $20 million. So that's what you want to see. You want to see these big pockets, deep pockets, throwing money into these projects in the view that in the near future they're going to pay out.
Exo, I wanted to say real quick, I think that you do have a valid point of like, of course, like, why do a lot of these chains need a token? I agree with you, but I think that we're also in a stage that's so early that there really isn't a ton of ways that people have like fine-tuned ways for protocols to actually make revenue. So the protocols that are making revenue are are awesome. Like we have like GMX, for example, and the reason it did so great last year was because of the liquidation model, right? And if you stake it, then you get a percent of all the liquidation fees that are on the platform. So all that money is coming back to the stakers in the form of ETH. And so I think there's going to be a bunch of different creative ways, and even just staking Ethereum itself, how you get like a percentage of the fees if you run a node, right? I mean, I think there's I think there's a bunch of different ways that like are quote unquote dividends that could work. And yeah, of course, a lot of the space is vaporware, but I think as we see as we see more and more chains actually producing revenue, then I think that narrative is going to change real quick. And I think that this cycle is the cycle that we could see that flip.
Okay, I'm going to play devil's advocate here. If those tokens are giving dividends, it becomes a security. What then happens to that token from a regulation perspective? That's my concern. When is that regulatory aspect going to be enforced in this space, which is really going to hamper down or clamp down on such securities? Because it is a security. If it's paying you dividends, then it's deemed as a security. So it's a very fine line. Again, is there an opportunity to make money before the regulation comes in? Probably. But if the regulation comes in before that, then that's really going to crush the space. The second point is, value accrual. Again, I talk about these projects. You're not going to get adoption in the real world, and even if you do, you're not going to see the likes of a company integrating with a decentralized blockchain for one that they've got no control of because it's on some decentralized servers somewhere in the world, which they've, if the system goes down, they're fucked. So you're seeing an adoption of a hybrid system where you can take Ethereum as an organization and run it off your own private chain. You don't need the Ethereum token. You can run an entire blockchain on a sidechain or a private chain as an organization or a company. So that then makes me wonder, well, what's the real value from a global adoption, world adoption use case for Ethereum? I don't really see one, apart from the ability to send money from A to B, and secondly, for some interaction to purchase goods or trade goods such as NFTs and perhaps DeFi, farming or whatever else anybody wants to do. I just don't see the real use case for global adoption. And for me, Bitcoin is still going to be the king. Bitcoin serves the purpose of, here's a product. It performs well when there's liquidity in the markets in the growth cycle, and it does one thing and it does it well. Ethereum does many things, but does it really do all of them well? I'm not so sure. I'm not a Bitcoin maxi either. I'm just trying to make an argument case. I just don't see any value outside of Bitcoin, Ethereum, and maybe another two top tier projects that is anything really sustainable for the long term future. I hope so, but I just can't see the reasoning behind it.
I think things
maybe
like
metaverse, maybe gaming, maybe that's a change. Maybe that's going to be the narrative which allows a wider adoption or growth of cryptocurrencies within the current environment.
I think it's things like the Cosmos ecosystem that are going to benefit with the token model, because the Atom token is what secures the infrastructure layer on the Cosmos hub. So cycle after cycle, there are ecosystems that are going to survive, and I think things like Cosmos is really that next chain that survived, similar to Ethereum, right? Like back in the previous bear market, there were many individuals that were saying, "Oh no, Ethereum is just a token and get these ICO tokens that promise a roadmap." And then, if you paid attention in the business and development side of things during late 2018, when Uniswap got that grant, and you looked into what Uniswap was going to do. And then, of course, later in 2019, when you had Suzu put ETHLand and Synthetics Network on the map, you were able to see these innovations in the space come to fruition slowly but surely. And I think we're going to see more of that this cycle, man. I truly do.
But Wabi, that's my argument to that. It's just contained. It's encapsulated within this community, within the crypto space. It's not really being spoken about outside of crypto. So back to my point. If I'm a global enterprise or an SME, why should I use Cosmos when I can use something like Corda? Is it Corda? An enterprise-based blockchain solution which companies integrate with, and there's no altcoin needed, no shitcoin needed. You host it on your own central service, and it gives you the same capabilities as a highly functional, reliable blockchain. So, what's the point in having Ethereum in a SME or a global organization? I just don't see how that global adoption happens in that industry. But again, from a metaverse, from a gaming perspective, yes, we know that Sony is already under development in terms of considering gaming and NFTs and perhaps integration with various chains. Maybe, maybe that's going to be the pathway for the true adoption of cryptocurrencies.
We're here joined by Sefi, who's an individual that's passionate about the Cosmos ecosystem and these other infrastructure plays within the digital asset space. I want to welcome you, Sefi, up on the stage. If you want to give your thoughts on the Cosmos ecosystem and, how can we bring Cosmos into that adoption that EXO is talking about, given that you're pretty knowledgeable within the ecosystem and we share very similarities on that aspect when it comes to passion. What's going on, brother? Welcome.
Not much. I'd say like the bullish case for the so-called app chain thesis, which is what Cosmos is doing, would be kind of that ultimately the apps are what make all the money. So for example, if you look at like the internet at large, right? Is it Cisco, the people providing routers and whatever, the so-called, the picks and shovels and whatever, making all the money? Or is it someone like, like Apple or something who's using the internet on top of that, or something like Facebook or Google or something like that? So the app chain idea is like, well, a company can spin up a chain and run their company or whatever use they have of blockchain directly. But the bearish case would be, and this is for all of crypto, is that block time and block space is getting cheaper and cheaper and cheaper as a result of this exact development. So if anything, what Cosmos can do is commoditize the entire crypto space in terms of block time, block space, and wind up being a race to the bottom for everybody, which is interesting, right? So if you're giving away the ability to spin up a chain within a week or however long it takes, and that's becoming easier and easier, like a person could basically just click a few buttons, select a few parameters, if you have a validator set that's interested, next thing you know, you've got a blockchain. So that's kind of interesting. So there's a lot that will change as a result of these sort of developments. And I think whether it's bullish or bearish, I think it's going to depend on each individual Cosmos-based project, what it brings to the table, and ultimately, are you bringing a service someone actually needs? But simply like trading things, hoping that speculative price action will kind of carry you the next 10 years, that's probably not the best way. So, for example, people like trading and whatever, they like to have order books with low slippage. So like DYDX moving to Cosmos chain, or opening a Cosmos chain, and something like Say Network, these are getting you really fast block times, low slippage, and they're getting you things where the cost per transaction is low enough to allow for decentralized like bot trading and other types of trading on DEX. In a decentralized manner. So I think there's a role for like taking anything you might do on a Binance or on any kind of perpetuals exchange like a Bybit or something, moving that to a purely decentralized fashion. I think there is some money to be made there, and that's happening as we speak. But there's a lot of bullish and bearish sort of like, I guess, overall elements to the DeFi/crypto space. And I think it's good to learn both of those angles. Anyway, thanks, guys. Yeah.
Sefi, and the one thing that Cosmos has as well is the really clean interface, the amount of dev power, and all the business development stuff. Like if you just look at the events of what's upcoming in 2023, there is Cosmos presence to a severe degree, and I think it starts with these innovations like blockchain modularity, with Celestia and the things going on with Saga XYZ. And I know I've mentioned those two protocols many, many, many times in this space, but I can't help but be enthusiastic. I am so excited, truly excited, more than I have ever been, after months and months and months of this sort of downwards emotional spiral from the industry, and it's good to see that light. There is some life to this, and I truly believe that by not next cycle, I'm sorry about that, correct, poor choice of words on my part, But I think within the next couple of years, you're going to see these technologies be implemented in products that we use every day, right? Starting with things like AI and eventually augmented reality and even gaming, right? And I think it's going to take time. Like a good example I like to give. This is sort of like a low IQ take. I don't really care. Judge me however you will. But the Nasdaq was formed, right? That index was formed in 1973, right? The Nasdaq was formed in 1973, correct? And it took over 30 years, almost 40 years, for individuals to have this technology in their pocket. Bill Gates went on Dave Letterman in the mid 90s, and he said, within the next 20 years, the internet will be in your pocket. Correct. And who do we have on that similar stage? We have individuals like Vitalik Buterin, individuals like Mo Sheik, right, from the Aptos crowd, right? We have individuals like Mike Novogratz from Galaxy Digital. So the innovation, right, it will come, right? It will come within the next 10 years. I think people just need to be patient, and I think if you stick around, you'll be able to meet some really cool people and to experience some great things that are lifelong. XO, go ahead, brother.
Larry, again, back to my main point. What problem are we solving that needs to be solved? Not talking about blockchain, what problem does cryptocurrency actually solve other than Bitcoin? That's my brief case. Look, I'm a dev. I've
Yeah.
been coding for 10, 12 years. I've written smart contract code as well. But I just, even myself as a developer, I get the whole gist of, there was a narrative last year that DeFi is the next layer of money, or built on top of CeFi, DeFi, whatever shit you want to call it. But I just don't see what the narrative is when you can have a private chain running transactions. You have your own proof of consensus mechanism, whatever you want to do. You don't need some sort of delegated proof of stake or proof of work consensus mechanism. You can just host it on your own servers, which does the work essentially for you. So I just don't understand where or why is that going to happen. How is that going to happen?
So I don't necessarily think it's like problem solving. I just think it's a new epoch of growth. Something new and exciting. How that looks like now and compared to 10 years, I'm not sure. But I do like what I see in the background. And I don't necessarily think that every project that gets built out into the digital asset space has to solve a certain problem, right? I just think that time will tell, as people like to say. But I do think these technologies will be implemented in some way, shape, or fashion. And I think augmented reality is one.
Yes,
to be honest.
you're right. The keyword you said, this technology will be implemented. You didn't say with the use of cryptocurrencies. I can give an example. Origin Trail. When I first bought that, I was a big fan of Origin Trail. I think it's a great tech. I think the way they're integrating with supply chain logistics with Walmart and all these other companies, fantastic. But what purpose does the actual token serve to those enterprises, to those businesses or organizations? They're not buying the token. They're not in need of the token, as far as I can remember. It's been a while since I've looked at the fundamentals. So what is the purpose of the token then? I agree with you. The tech's great, but let's separate the tech from the actual currency. That's the base case of my argument.
One specific thing would be as a mix of AI and robotics comes into the picture, crypto can be a fairly seamless way of ultimately like paying and exchanging for different services, abstracting away all the crypto layer like from the general public, and could be an interesting way to sort of just simplify those types of transactions if they can be kept pretty cheap, which I think they will. So there are some automation solutions that could be interesting. Do they have to be cryptocurrency for many of these applications? I think XO is probably correct in that many of those things could be done without cryptos. But at the same time, like having a liquid token of some kind that powers, say, for example, a robotics platform that you use all over the world, you don't have to then deal with different currency exchange and all these kinds of things. But then, of course, you have to assume that like the public in those countries is going to buy the crypto for currency. They're going to convert their native cash to this thing. So you don't lose that layer. So I think what XO is sort of saying as well, like even if these were very, very useful, the public they still see their cash as what they're paying with at some level. And I don't think they're going to think, not, the world at large may not necessarily think, well, I have to own cryptocurrency to do this task. Maybe all that stuff just happens in the background, in which case, like, the price appreciation angle, of, speculative value of the actual currency itself may be moot or useless. It's just a data layer at that point.
Sefi, but it's also things like securing the network, and then it also includes ownership, right? Like when you do have these things implemented in things like games and things like DeFi, essentially these byproducts called tokens, they secure the network. And I do agree, I will agree, right? I understand the sentiment that most of the tokens are not needed, and I am 100% on that fact, right? I agree with that, right? But there are some things that do have their place, and I think we're in for an exciting ride. To be honest, I'm very optimistic, very
Yeah,
optimistic.
look, I didn't mean to be a doomer. I'm just asking curveball questions just to give the audience food for thought, so they don't get stuck on this narrative that shitcoins are the future. But look, in all positivity, I used to work in investment banking as a tech guy, as a developer. But there's some interesting developments happening, and I don't know if many of the individuals here understand MiFID or Basel 3, but I think they've given allowance where Basel have allowed crypto rules, given some of the largest banks that they can hold Bitcoin as some form of collateral on their books. I think it's up to a maximum of 2.5% exposure. I can drop the link, Wabi, if you want to put it up in the nest. But
Yeah, go
that
ahead,
to
man.
me,
DM it, DM
that
it.
to me is a real sign of global adoption for cryptocurrencies, primarily Bitcoin or Ethereum. So I was just trying to play devil's advocate earlier. So
No problem, man. We enjoy these conversations, and rather I enjoy these conversations. I really do, and that's why I host these things every day. I want to thank you, XO. It's been a while since I've been so engaged into a conversation, and that's that attributes to you know the pretty cool introduction to the show, because usually when I start these spaces, I give my formal introduction and all that stuff, really formal. But I think moving forward, it's just going to be more of that natural connection and flow between our conversations. So I want to thank you, man. I'm really loving this discussion, and I see we're joined here by a new individual, Crypto Mina. So I want to welcome you on our spaces here because
Hi.
Bitcoin. Thank you for popping on. What's going on? Welcome.
Yeah, thank you for bringing me onto the stage. And XO, I think you're definitely asking the right questions, right? And and I want to chime into what you asked earlier. I think what we are trying to do is like we're trying to democratizing a lot of process or a lot of like power architecture that already exists in the Web2 world. The Web2 world is already there's a lot of like monopoly, or it's already controlled by a lot of large tech giants. Are we trying to have like a Web3 revolution to make the current situation better? Yes, but is it essentially going to be going towards the centralization again? That part I don't know. Like I think time will tell, but at least like we are all with our good intention to have this technology. So that's why like we have blockchain. So we are moving towards a more transparent future, right? We are kind of like pushing those large projects to say, oh, you cannot monopolize your business anymore. It will not be only relying on the advertising model anymore. The artists should get to pay more, and we as the users, we need to see more data, right? We don't want you to manipulate the data on the backend server, and we don't want to lose our identity. Let's say, oh, if Twitter decides to shut down their server, and then we all lose our account, like that's just very bad for us. So I admit, like, we are not doing everything completely right, and maybe we did a lot of things wrong, but as long as like we are with a good intention and with proper like risk management, and with the industry mature more, I do think this has its own meaning in the long term. And then
Yeah, Raina, your point is excellent. I think the way I look at it is these systems give pause to other existing entrenched systems, and the existence of these systems makes those existing like Web2 infrastructures have to really think about what the universe is going to look like going forward, because these things are out there as potential competitors. And just the mere existence of them, I think, is super important. Like a place where you could go where you didn't have to be involved with those if those became particularly oppressive or whatever. So yeah, I think that's the mere existence is actually meaningful in its own way.
Yeah, it's a choice, right? So essentially, maybe like people will say, oh, maybe we combine the current like Web2 system with the Web3 technology. That might be a choice. XO, please go ahead.
No, I think they're great points. I think Web3 is a layer on top of Web2. Web2 fits the purpose that it serves today, and I think Web3 is an enhancement on top of Web2. But at the end of the day, we're going to have to see a regulation coming for true adoption. There needs to be a safety net around this entire space. We saw some of the aftermath. It was quite horrific with what we saw with FTX and some of the contagion effects. But nevertheless, look, I'm really optimistic about the space. Wabi, I've just dropped you 2 links. You can use the latter in your DM, which talks about the Basel Committee endorses global crypto banking to be implemented in 2025 for tier 1 cryptocurrencies. So I'm assuming tier 1 being Bitcoin, Ethereum, possibly Ripple. God knows what else, but I think it's worth pinning up. So I take confidence when I see articles from governing global bodies such as Basel III, talking about allowing banks to hold cryptocurrencies. That's what we want to see moving forward.
I mean, I have conversation with like people who work with blockchain in the banks, and now he is like full time in Web3. But what he told me is like 3 or 5 years ago, and this is on record, okay? Because I conduct a lot of interviews with like founders, investors, right? So he specifically told me that like all those like I think I don't remember the exact time, but that's what he says. Like 3 years ago, when he first talked about the blockchain idea, those like boards at the banks or the managers at the banks, they were amazed by the technology. But then but it was really hard to find developers like globally to work on the first like blockchain project within the bank. But he was managed to pull that off. He talked to like thousands of developers within the whole like bank ecosystem, right? And then essentially, I think 2 years later, he decided he want to work on Web3 full time. So it's not like the traditional banks, they're not aware, and instead they are like building they're utilizing the blockchain technology internally with a lot of their internal projects. But as you mentioned, regulation is an uncertainty. So I'm not sure like which bank or which big institutions will be the first movers, but I think once they move, that means like they kind of already they want to test the water, or they already have some kind of agreement with the policymaker. I don't know. I'm just speculating it, but they that would be a good thing to watch.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, look, I was applying for blockchain development roles in 2016-17. I can tell you clearly there was a clear distinguish between what banks were looking for versus what some of these startups were looking for. Startups out there were looking for Web3 developers who had experience of Solidity to create a project, create a cryptocurrency, create wallets, okay? Whereas banks use something, I don't know if many people are familiar with R3 Coder. It's used by various, organizations out there. For example, there's MetLife, a United States-based insurance organization. They use R3 Coder. That's a blockchain solution. So again, I think there's a confusion here that people are assuming blockchain means cryptocurrencies. No, it's blockchain is a technology. Cryptocurrency is just a payment system mechanism that sits on top. It works in the decentralized space. But again, I keep alluding to the fact where I can't really see how Ethereum is going to be used as a decentralized, especially the current proof of stake Ethereum is going to be used by organizations. Maybe, for gaming, like I said, but in terms of the cryptocurrency, yes, possibly. If Basel is encouraging the use of tier 1 cryptocurrencies, allowing global banks to hold that in 2025, then maybe. But I just can't see the use case for other chains making their way outside. Maybe Ethereum, maybe Corda is already an established blockchain system that's integrated with many platforms out there. So without the use of a cryptocurrency. So again, we just have to understand how we use the word cryptocurrency versus blockchain technology. Yes, the technology is great, but the technology can exist without the cryptocurrency.
I know you guys were talking about, institutions adopting this, banks and all of that stuff. If you guys remember back in early 2017, when the Ethereum Enterprise Alliance was announced, JP Morgan was at the head of the table. And they're the individuals that have funded a lot of these projects on the back end when it comes to seed stuff. Even Andreessen Horowitz Capital, but it's in the very early stages. And I do believe in the next 10 to 15 years, we're going to be in for some exciting stuff. And I think this is,
Yeah,
I think this is sort of like the NASDAQ back in the 80s, early 90s, to be honest, where you have a whole
yeah. Like
basket of
Wabi,
stuff.
for example, so I was around since the Steve Jobs and the Bill Gates of the world, and like the beginning of computing and all of that. So I'm a little bit older than some of you guys maybe. And the thing is, like, I remember the entire arc of computing history almost at this point, like, or any significant portion of it that, like, from a user perspective, I watched it emerge in the medical space in particular, from when I used to have like a radiology computer at Army, where, like, a computer that could look at X-rays was $100,000 object, with a with a screen that could actually see the resolution. So I was in it. I've always been really early in tech in that sense. And if you look at adoption, say for example, the medical community in tech, like ideas that I had like 20 years ago are being implemented now. And what I noticed with the uptake is, as far as, like, let's say doctors or patients or users, what you find is that like a generation has to die, essentially, of the old guard, who has like maybe not used these things. And what ends up happening is then like the new generation that shows up, who has been using these tools, like let's say crypto for currency purposes or anything else, those are the people who end up coming to make, say for example, regulations. They are the ones that are maybe the ones populating the actual institutions at that point, right? So like, as time goes on, the people that actually live in politics and industry and all of that end up being actual end users that then have a little better sense of how to create policy and all of those elements, like regulations, like EXO was talking about. And it is a very generational, like, it's a very time consuming thing. Like, interesting things do take like, good solid 10, 20 years to fully kind of implement, I think. And you're even in Web 2 and in smartphones and everything, you're still seeing that. You know how long it took to get a fucking share button on a phone? Jesus Christ. Like, like, all the information was always there, and it was always so hard to get it from one thing to the other. Like, if you guys remember this, like with the smartphone revolution in like 2005 till now, or if you were using a fucking Pocket PC or Palm Pilot, it took a really long time for really simple ideas to finally get implemented properly. I think the same is going to be true in this space, and there will maybe be interesting new solutions for blockchain or utilities for it that maybe haven't been fully fleshed out yet. And I think that's the stuff to look out for over the next 10, I think, is kind of how I look. But look really long range, I think, and then think like, what are going to be the utilities that use this, and why should people bother?
I just want to remind you guys, if anyone just came into the space, we want to welcome you. And if you're enjoying these spaces that's more crypto specific and DeFi types content here on Twitter Spaces, my name is Wabi. I host these pretty much every day. And we're having a crypto and DeFi roundtable with Sefi, DC, our boy Payne, XO, and a new individual to the stage, Crypto Mina, and also Damiano and Avocado Toast. We're just talking all things digital assets. And if you enjoy this kind of content, feel free to follow us here at Because Bitcoin and turn on bell notifications so that you can be made aware of when these spaces go live. And if you've missed portions of this space, whether you're not able to stick through the whole thing, you've been in and out, or you just arrived, once the space is concluded, in about 5 to 10 minutes after it's concluded, it'll be uploaded onto our YouTube channel. XO, what's going on, my bro?
Yeah, I think adoption I think it's certainly happening. I'll give you several examples of why I believe it's happening. Well, first of all, I think you look at the integration aspects, PayPal, Visa, Apple, okay? All these firms are talking about integrating with Bitcoin. That's a great step in the right direction. it helped provide as a catalyst for the previous bull market rally in 2021. And I think, back to CFI's point, 10, 15 years from now, who knows, I think Kevin O'Leary, like him or hate him, I think he made a very, very valid point that perhaps Bitcoin and a select few of the cryptocurrencies could essentially form the 12th sector of the equities market. Is it SP500 with the 11 sectors? It could form the 12th sector out there, another layer to the tech sector. So I think there is definitely scope
And
for.
I think, and XO, I think that's where protocols that are being built on top of Cosmos can help out with that, right? Things like Injective and Say Network, predominantly like the newer protocols like Say, that can help facilitate that. And it would be pretty cool to have these assets, if it were even possible, to be in the basket of, say, like the Nasdaq 100 or the S&P. I'm not sure how that would happen. I'm not sure how it would happen. But if we do look at certain infrastructure plays like Matic, and they're trying to do like their own chain, they eventually want to branch off of Ethereum and do their whole Polygon Edge ecosystem. So I'm looking forward to that, and their business and development roadmap that they've had for the last like 2 years has been astronomical to see. So I'm in agreement with you, man. I'm in agreement with you on that.
I'm only, with all due respect, my only slight disagreement is, again, you've talked about protocols, you've talked about tech, you've talked about Polygon having their own ecosystem. Polygon having their own ecosystem is great for their own development, them as a company, them as a business, for them to float on the stock exchange. But what does that mean for their cryptocurrency? It doesn't mean anything.
I want to say something. I think it's actually, we're gonna actually see a merge, because if you think about traditional finance, right, when you do an IPO for a company, right, you deal with, let's say, an exchange, a real world exchange, not the one that we talk about cryptocurrency, but then you have board member, and then you basically you are selling your company's stock, right? And in the crypto world, we also have like OTC, we have market maker, and then we have centralized exchange and decentralized exchange. So we kind of almost like replicate the whole financial infrastructure from the Web2 world. So that's why I'm saying like we might see a merge between those two like financial infrastructure players, between Web2 and Web3, because the listing process is not different. Like fundamentally speaking or financially speaking, it's almost the same process. It's essentially like which technology player are going to form the foundation for those financial infrastructure. Now we are not talking about the application layer, which is like the consumer facing applications. For example, your social apps, or like what you use for like chatting. I'm just talking about the pure financial perspective. They are like very similar.
I agree. Once again, from an infrastructure point of view, absolutely, there's still a use case. I just don't see the use case of why anybody in 24, 2, 3, 4 years' time is going to use some arbitrary shitcoin token to.
It's more transparent. We're not.
No, I think it's going to be capped to just primary core basket of crypto, top tier cryptocurrencies that can be transacted on these so-called hybrid system. Hybrid, I say hybrid because when you've got a hybrid system, say for example, Ethereum sits on top of some public network, then it is going to be a hybrid, because at some point you've got to give control of the network to the various governing bodies around the globe, because they're not going to allow some rogue random people to run a proof of stake network. There's no way they're going to take that liability. So it for me, adoption is in the form of let me start again. Adoption is in the form of a hybrid system, an amalgamation of centralized and decentralized system, where ultimately the governing bodies will dictate what happens and what doesn't happen, and via regulation as well. And look, a classic example now is we've all seen, I think, with one of the latest developments with MetaMask, is that they can hold your IP address. And how long will it be before they ask you to start KYCing every single wallet that you want to interact with? So we are making a step closer towards regulation if we want to see adoption. But again, I just don't. Nobody's been able to answer that one question that I have outside of Bitcoin and possibly Ethereum. What are the advantage does a said shitcoin have in the adoption of acceptance of cryptocurrencies on a day-to-day basis or real world use case scenario? I'm not seeing it.
Yeah,
You're right though, XO. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Wob, if you want to go for it.
yeah. If you mean cryptocurrency, like payment options, I think we already have things like Litecoin, Bitcoin, Dash, and what have you. But when we're talking more towards these protocols that have tokens, I think interacting with their ecosystems, you kind of need that base token. Like if you want to use the Cosmos Hub, you need the Atom token, and the Atom token also secures the Cosmos Hub. So there is a use. But again, like I've said, like I do agree that most of the tokens out there in the digital asset space aren't needed. But I'm
Yeah, but
still
Wabi, if I'm a bank or an organization, I can take the Cosmos blockchain and deploy it on my own servers. I don't need it. I don't need anybody to reach a consensus mechanism or proof of consensus or a cryptocurrency.
That's correct. Like
Which is
you do not
so,
need, like I could run up like a 5 or 10 or 100 validator network as American Airlines and
correct.
start a chain. I don't need to necessarily have the validators be decentralized. I could just simply have, to prevent DDoS attacks and other problems, I could just run all the validators myself and not float
Absolutely.
any kind of cryptocurrency. Simply pay for the computing power and be done with it. So yeah, there are some interesting things like, military is looking at some decentralized mechanisms so that they don't have to rely upon specific cloud servers. They've looked at like constellation technology and things of that nature, like DAG type technology to connect like fighter planes to missile target packages and things of that nature. So there are some interesting applications that in the civilian world we don't really think about on a daily basis too, that could benefit by not being controlled by let's say, for example, a specific corporate entity and things like that. So interesting stuff. But yeah, like Exo's right. There's a lot of things that don't really need a cryptocurrency and don't necessarily need a blockchain either. And also don't need to be decentralized. There are some advantages in some instances to centralization. And that can be fine too.
Yeah,
I want to
thank you,
add that we've been
C5.
hearing a lot about centralization, about transparency tonight. And I think the answers come up 2 or 3 times that crypto is more transparent. And it's not necessarily more transparent because, yes, even though transactions are recorded on a blockchain and most have public ledgers, it doesn't actually show who these parties involved are. It shows you wallets that the transactions are. And there are exchanges, there are dark web laundry services, there are different wallets that can anonymize transactions, and it makes it much harder to trace these funds. So when people shout like transparency, transparency, it's not necessarily more transparent. It's the illusion of more transparency. It's a different approach to what could be a good use case for transparency, but at the moment there's a lot of projects that don't actually have true transparency, and just having a public ledger is nowhere near enough to justify, well, it's transparent. Well, what if I have 1,000 wallets? Like there's so many ways around this so-called transparency.
I think what matters the most is if we have fun, right? That's what I care about. And when I look at what Saga is building, when I look at Shibuya, I get thrilled when I see this, right?
Wabi, keep it real. You're here to make no. Come on,
I am keeping
let's
it real.
cut the
I'm
bullshit out,
keeping
man.
it.
You chatting shit. You're here to make money, bro. First and foremost, we're all here to make money. That's it. Make your money. Fuck off. That's it. Anything else, you're in it for the tech. Good for you, man. But ultimately, you're here to make money, and that is the bottom line. That's it. That's the fact.
XO,
What
look,
else brings it?
Is
What
there
else brings
anything wrong
everybody
with
look.
here?
I
that,
am
though,
here. I
Come
am
on, man.
here,
Nobody's here for the
guys.
tech.
Gentlemen, I am here to add value to the Web3 digital asset economy and here to engage with the vibrant community that is brought together via the power of friendship. And here we are on a Thursday night, joined with our friends Sefi, Exo, DC, Payne, Avocado Toast, and Damiano. And I'm having a blast.
Love
And
y'all.
my answer to you is it's a zero sum game as well when it comes to buying and selling the tokens at the end of the day. But I love you too, Abby.
It's fun, dude. I made you laugh, man. I don't think, at least to my knowledge, I don't think there's been anyone that has made you laugh, that has warmed your heart, that has made you feel more passionate towards all things Web3 than myself. So I
I
want to thank.
agree. I'm going to keep it real. I'm being dead serious here. I think this is actually a really entertaining space for me because it's just given me food for thought that perhaps I need to slow down trading and maybe start researching more into projects moving forward. So in some way, it was a sporadic space for me. I just randomly jumped on and thought, hey, why not? And here we are. You've given me some real food for thought, and it's really invigorating speaking to
Exactly.
so many of you guys here that
Yeah. And
it's great. It really
and
is. Yeah.
and it's amazing what's going on behind the scenes. Like, Sefi, he hosts many great spaces with a friend of mine, Coach Bruce, and they host these insane spaces that you'll just get a plethora of information of all things Cosmos and all things Luna, and I can't help but feel that old stir of animal spirits when it comes to Terra, and that's when you met me, XO. And like I've said, I'm looking forward to adding value to the space, and speaking to community members like yourself that have been in the industry for a while, and you're a dev too, and many people don't even know that, but you do have dev experience, and you're applying yourself during these times to take a fundamental approach, and perhaps, who knows, maybe Trader XO will be working at like Delphi and working on his own protocol, right?
Oh
Or
bullshit! That's not gonna happen.
I'm
Fuck
optimistic for you,
that.
bro. I'm optimistic for you, man.
Bro, once you create a project, you're fucking stuck in this space. And the minute you walk out and the project dies, you got somebody you're always looking over your back like shit.
So
Fuck
XO,
that.
so
No, thank you.
XO, so it's like CT, right? You say you're gonna leave, but you can never leave. You can only take a break, but once you're in, you're strapped in for life, dude. These are some lifelong friendships that you're gonna have.
I agree.
So
I honestly agree with you. I think this space is a blessing. I wouldn't be where I am today without crypto Twitter. Honestly, the people that I've met, the traders that I've met, the people who have helped me on my journey to learn, point me in the right direction. I wouldn't be where I am today. Honestly, I can honestly thank God, hand on heart, that I've been very humbled to be in the position where I am. Whether it's luck, whether it's destiny, it's just meant to be the way it is, and hopefully the same happens for all everybody else in this space. Where in the near future they're blessed in the next crypto space, and hopefully everybody makes it out safely with profit. Unfortunately, in this market, there's always losers, there's always winners. So I just hope that everybody can take good advice from people like yourself and others in this space. That these are the projects to invest in, and perhaps give heed as to when is a good time to get out of the market, essentially, because I think that's the most painful thing. It really hurts me because I've been there myself. You see people make astronomical amounts of money from 5 figures to 7 figures, but then it really pains when you lose it all and you look back and you regret thinking, shit, if only I'd taken profit, what was I thinking? We've seen the horror shows with Luna, and I really felt sorry for people. In that whole debacle, it hurts. It really hurts the space and the community more than anything. So I think there's lessons learned. Some of the best lessons have been learned in 2022, and anybody who pays attention to those who've experienced the ups and downs, and definitely respect what individuals have to say, and take everything with a pinch of salt as well. I mean, don't buy into any bullshit narratives for too long. Is my ultimate message. But thank you, Bobby.
no problem, man. It's a pleasure to speak with you. And with that being said, if there's anyone that wants to give their final thoughts, we'll open the space up for another 5 minutes. If not, we'll start wrapping up. If you guys enjoyed this conversation, feel free to follow us here at Because Bitcoin. I host these spaces every day. Turn on bell notifications so you can be made aware of when we go live. If you enjoy these crypto specific contents, feel free to give some feedback in the comment section on our YouTube channel, what have you. Share it. Would appreciate it. I want to thank Sefi, DC, XO, Payne, Damiano, Avocado for coming up here, and also our other speakers. I think we lost connection with like two of them. But we've been running the space for almost 3 hours. We usually like to keep a tight ship around here and run them for an hour and a half max to be respectful of everyone's time. But today was sort of a mega space. So I appreciate everyone in the audience for sticking it through and listening to us talk shop. Just a heads up for tomorrow's Crypto World Radio Space, it will be at 2 p.m. Eastern Time, and our special guest is going to be Trader RB, an individual that I've spoken with for close to a year now. And him and EXO, they know the term Operation Killwin, which ended with Nexo, in my opinion. But happy to be proven wrong. If we make new lows, that's fine. If we don't, that's fine. I'm just enthusiastic to be here with you all and to give to give value back to the Web3 economy and the community spaces. With that being said, let's give some final thoughts. Sefi, any final thoughts, brother, before we close up?
Yeah, everyone live well, and I think there's a fairly bright future ahead. Like, there's many tech avenues that just look amazing today. There's AI, there's quantum computing, there's nuclear fusion, there's the crypto space, there is genetic engineering. Like there's literally no lack of like crazy innovations happening that'll drive the sort of next bull markets of the next 20 years. I'm more impressed today than I was like when computers started being developed. There's a lot of shit happening that's people should be, if you're a tech fan, like should be optimistic about.
EXO, any final thoughts, brother?
I generally don't. I just want to say thank you for everybody taking the time to listen to my annoying voice, and Wappy for having me on, first and foremost. It's been an absolute pleasure getting to speak with you and many others in the space, and I always try to be a pain in the arse asking curveball questions, but I guess I'm just somewhat of a realist at times. So, yeah, that's it, really. Thank you very much, everybody, for listening and tuning in.
Payne, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I just wanted to say thanks, EXO, for coming up. And I think you are asking good questions that definitely need to be considered. But I think at the end of the day, like, I know this analogy gets used a lot, but if you would have looked at the internet in 1999 or 2000, you would have thought it was the biggest vaporware pile of dog shit you'd ever seen, right? But the people that truly had conviction and envisioned a future in which this could be used every day for something that might not exist today, but they just know the groundwork is there to to basically revolutionize the way that we do end up living life. Um, those are the people that really did well over the next 2 decades, and I think that's basically the people that are speaking up here today. Are just, we might not necessarily have the exact correct answer for how this is, gonna revolutionize everything right now, and I think that's okay. But we just know that there's something here, and there's something that can be used as far as immutable technology goes, and financial freedom in the sense of like flash loans, and basically being able to manage your money outside of the credit system. So I just think that there's basically bright a bright future ahead for the crypto space, and I think it's something that if you just stay engaged with and pay attention to good projects, that you'll end up doing very, very well over the next couple of decades. So thanks for coming up.
Damiano, any final thoughts, brother?
Oh, I'm just really happy that you invited me to the space. Wasn't planning on being here tonight, but I actually met a really lot of cool people, and normally I play the devil's advocate, and it was actually really refreshing to have EXO ask a lot of the tough questions and made me think even deeper than I normally do. So appreciate that, and honestly met a lot of cool people today. So really happy to be here. Thank you for listening, and look forward to more spaces.
Avocado, any last thoughts, brother?
No, thanks for having me. Yeah, the breadth of topics on here was pretty crazy and interesting. So yeah, enjoyed everybody's thoughts.
That's what I'm talking about, man. Thanks for coming up here. I want to thank you all for coming to the space. We ran it for about 3 hours. We talked all things digital assets, and you guys even got to hear my Macho Man / Hulk Hogan impression talking about Bear Chain. Spoke about Shibuya, Celestia, Saga XYZ, Aztec Network, Injective Protocol, and all things Cosmos and Ethel 2s. So it was a great conversation. XL, thank you. Sefi, thank you. Payne, Damiano, Avocado, thank you. And for the listeners in the audience, as soon as this space has ended, in about 5 to 10 minutes, it will be uploaded onto our YouTube channel, and I will be sharing that link. Feel free to share it with your friends. And if you enjoy these kind of crypto-specific spaces from myself, I host them every day. And if you'd like to know what time they're hosted, you'd have to follow the profile and click on bell notifications. I try to shoot for 7 p.m. Eastern time, but sometimes it might be a little bit later or a little bit earlier due to time constraints within my personal life, or time zone differences with our guests, such as tomorrow with Trader RB, who's over in the UK area. So for tomorrow's Crypto World Radio Space, it will be at 2 p.m. Eastern time, and he's an absolute pleasure to have on Spaces, as is guys like Mercury came on here, EXO came on here, Sefi came on here, and these are individuals that you want to follow. So with that being said, feel free to follow all the speakers up on our panel. Absolute chads that I love speaking with. I can't wait to speak with you guys again tomorrow. And with that being said, everyone take care. Have a nice night. My name is Wabi. Take care. God bless you.
God bless, Wabi. Thanks for being 10 out of 10 host as always.
Also, make that Hulk Hogan thing the new normal intro. That was dope.
Next episode, bro. Next episode. What you gonna do, brother?
The trading current is just math. It's just math. It has a 95.45% hit rate when we deviate outside of CP2 and CN2. All you had to do is recognize that 95% of the time when we get over here, under this blue line, we get some sort of mean reversion. So let's just assume you long right here. 95 out of 100 times, when I buy this, I'm gonna get some sort of bounce. It's just math. Look what would have happened as we move up. Look at the bounce that came after. And now look where we are. If you had just blindly followed the current, you take all emotions out of it, you say, I'm going to trust the statisticians. You would have bought Dow Jones somewhere down here under 30,000, depending on how you want to measure it from absolute top to bottom, 20% move. We also have multi-time frame alerts. You don't even have to be at your computer on TradingView. You can ping your phone. Now, the current has some really awesome features, and I would urge you guys to join our Discord to get access to it. We give it away for free as a tool to the community. It's just math. There's really no need to overcomplicate things, not even in the slightest.